A very good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Graham Pass, Chairman of West Berkshire Council, and I'm supported this evening by the Vice Chairman, Councillor Clive Hooker. I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting. I'd also like to welcome those of you who are watching this meeting via live stream, and in particular, would like to welcome those honorary aldermen and alderwomen who have joined us remotely. All members are invited to participate in full council meetings. The Council Chief Executive, Nick Carter, and the Executive Directors are present to support members if required. I'm assisted by Phil Rumans, who will be acting as the Zoom host of the evening, and Moira Fraser is the clerk to the meeting. I will now pass over to the Deputy Monitoring Officer, Shiraz Sheikh, who will outline how the meeting will be conducted. Mr. Sheikh, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. Standard Zoom reminders are now being shown on screen. In addition to those points, if it becomes necessary for any members to telephone into the meeting, you won't be able to signal to speak so. Once everyone who has raised a Zoom hand has spoken, the Chairman will ask anyone who has telephoned in to speak in the order he determines. Tapping in *9 can be used by those dialing in to raise their hands. Members, please note that you will be asked to vote on the minutes by means of raising your hands physically when asked if you approve the minutes. We will deal with all other matters that require a vote via call vote. Each member will be asked individually if they wish to vote for or against, or if they wish to abstain on an item. The call vote outcome will not appear in the minutes. Anyone wishing for the vote to be recorded should ask for a named vote before the vote is taken. 3 other members will need to support this by raising their virtual blue hand. If we need to adjourn the meeting at any point, the Chairman will adjourn and will advise the Council of the revised time and date of the meeting. If it is a short adjournment, you'll be able to rejoin this Zoom meeting. Otherwise, a fresh appointment will be sent out. Members are reminded that as this is a full council meeting, members are only permitted to speak once on an item unless they are the proposer or unless they are raising a point of order or personal explanation. All members are permitted to speak for a maximum of 5 minutes unless they are advised otherwise. Moira Fraser will notify anyone that is speaking when they have 30 seconds to go. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sheikh. Well, we start with, sadly, some sad news, and I will ask you in a minute for a minute's silence, to observe a minute's silence, to remember an ex-chairman of Newbury District Council, Bill Palmer, and an ex-Lord Lieutenant, Sir Philip Wroughton. And I'd like to start by saying a few words about Bill Palmer. Not many of us will remember him as Chairman of Council in 1990 to 1991. Bill served in the Grenadier Guards. He was obviously part of the Huntley and Palmer Biscuit family and served as their chairman between 1980 and 1983. And for those of you with a sweet tooth, I'm sure you would wish to know that he was president of the Flour Milling and Baking Research Association and chairman of the Cake and Biscuit Alliance. He served the county well. He was High Sheriff between 1974 and 1975 and was a Deputy Lieutenant from 1992. Councillor Linden, I believe you wish to add a few words.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I remember him well when I originally joined the council in 1983. He's one of the people who felt it was important to do public service, and I think he needs to be seen in that light. And I remember him well. I got on very well with him. He was always very friendly, and he was a joy to be on the council with, as Councillor Pass would also concur.
Right, thank you, Councillor Linden. And Sir Philip Wroughton. Sir Philip, he was Lord Lieutenant of the Royal county from 1995 to 2008. Sir Philip, I'm not going to touch much on his actual career because I know Councillor James Cole wishes to recount a little story about that. But he was chairman of CT Bowring, an insurance broker, and he was a member of the Council of Lloyds. That's Lloyds Insurance, not the bank. He was president of the Berkshire Community Foundation, and I think above all, he will be remembered very fondly for not only his sense of service to the Royal County, but also his humour. And I've been told I can tell one little story to illustrate this. For those of you who I'm sure know, the uniform of a Lord Lieutenant is military in style. Navy blue with shoulder boards and silver buttons. It looks very grand. And Sir Philip once was attending an event at a prestigious hotel in Berkshire and walked up to the front door to be told by the doorman, "Good evening, sir, the band enter from the rear entrance," which took in very good stead. We will remember him well and fondly too. In 2010, when I was first chairman of council, he was took my wife Hilary at an event to one side and explained the history of why we were there and what we were doing. So on a personal level, we have very fond memories of him. Councillor Hooker, I know you knew him well, so may I hand over to you?
Thank you, Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to give a personal tribute to Sir Philip Wroughton. I first met Sir Philip in November 2006, when, as Lord Lieutenant of Berkshire, he was in attendance presenting long service certificates to member of the judiciary at Reading Crown Court. And it was immediately noticeable that he showed a unique quality of making everyone in the room feel special by taking time to speak to everyone personally, while bringing a quiet calm and authority to the occasion. When I was elected as ward member for Downlands in 2006, Sir Philip Wroughton, unbeknown to me, became one of my constituents, and surprisingly, he only lived 10 minutes up the road on the Woolly Park estate that is much loved Chadderworth Village. And over that time, I've spent many enjoyable meetings with him discussing various issues such as planning, support of rural farms and their possible diversification options, and the encouragement of attracting and retaining small startup high-tech industry into the ward. And he always recognised the importance of the AONB, of which he was a keen supporter, and of which I think he led by example in the way he managed his farms at his beloved Chadderworth and Forley. There's no doubt about it, Sir Philip was a true gentleman, and I will miss his advice, his encouragement and friendship. And I'm sure you would all like to join me in sending our most heartfelt condolences to Lady Wroughton and his daughters, Kirstine and Carolyn, on this very sad time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hooker. And Councillor Cole, James Cole, I believe you worked with him.
I did. Thank you, Chairman. I did know Philip because he became my boss in the 1980s. I was a director of what had become a subsidiary of the Marsh Group, a company indeed called CT Bowring Reinsurance. Philip became its chairman before going higher and higher and eventually becoming deputy chair of Marsh, which is a vast American group. He came up through the American side, whereas I was part of what we called international, which covered the rest of the world. So he knew relatively little about our clients and the countries we travelled, but there was one memorable occasion in the later 1980s when we took him to Baghdad for the General Arab Insurance Federation's conference. It was the middle of the Iraq-Iran war. There was the known possibility of an Iranian Scud missile landing. Didn't actually happen, as it turned out. But there were consequently some obvious signs of security. He took it all with aplomb. He did what we asked him to do. He spread the word. He shook the hands, BC, before COVID. And he was to be seen talking to clients outside the Sheraton Hotel that we stayed at, resplendent in a Panama hat. He was a very good leader. He was very good at what he did, and he was a very nice man. And he took all that with him when he became Lord Lieutenant of Berkshire. If you did read the obituaries in newspapers, you will have learned how much he did for the county. Some has been mentioned. He was High Sheriff, President of the Newbury Show, as it then was. He founded the Mary Hare Foundation to raise money for the Mary Hare School, trustee of the Berkshire Community Foundation. He also did other charity roles. And of course, he was Lord Lieutenant. And I suspect many of you will have met him as that. In speaking here, I simply wanted to express my thanks to him. And thank you, Chairman, for permitting me to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Cole, and thank you, members, for those tributes. I would now ask, please, for a minute's silence in respect. Thank you, members. We now turn to the agenda. Agenda item 1 is apologies. Mr. Shake, would you tell us of any inability to attend the meeting, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I've received no apologies. However, I understand Councillor Billy Drummond may need to leave the meeting early. Thank you.
Item 2, Chairman's remarks, which will be uncharacteristically brief because of the pandemic. I did manage to get out and lay a wreath in Newbury on Remembrance Sunday, and I was delighted to do so. Otherwise, I've been doing things somewhat remotely, making videos for the Swift Courier annual appeal and a variety of other very good causes. So I don't think I've gone viral, to the disappointment of my granddaughter, but I have been out there trying to spread the message that we're open for business as usual. But I'd also like to take this opportunity, or this place on the agenda, to pay another little tribute, if I may. Back at the time when we were becoming a unitary authority, so around about 96, 97, we were debating the numbers of staff, whether we could get anyone from the county council, which was being dissolved. And as group leader at the time, I was involved with a lot of the senior appointments. One in particular stood out for me, which, and I remember very fondly. And that gentleman is here today at his very last council meeting for West Berkshire. It's John Ashworth. And I'm going to say just a few words about John. A lot of us know him well and have worked with him very closely. But he started at West Berkshire at the council on the 29th of September 1997, just over 23 years ago. He was brought up in Yorkshire and attended Huddersfield New College. He has a degree in geography from University College London. He went on from there to do a diploma in environmental health, which I think set out his career route, really. Has a master's in environmental pollution science, and subsequently also did an MBA. He started off in employment at Haringey and came up through the ranks as an environmental health officer. Moved to Watford Borough Council as an assistant director, and then on to Stevenage as head of environmental health. From there, he went to the London Borough of Havering as head of environmental services, before we were lucky enough for him to apply for a job with us, where he became very heavily involved in the waste PFI and the capital program bid and all sorts of other things. John, I just wanted to say, along with all of us, I'm sure, we appreciate what you have done for West Berkshire, your loyal service. I know you're not going for a week or two or three, but I would wish on a personal level, having been in with you at the beginning, just to say at the end, I wish you well and thank you for all you've done for us. And I will leave it at that. I'm sure other things at other times. Sorry, Councillor Dillon. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hilary Cole. I know you work very closely with John and also just wanted to say a few words.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as you say, I've worked with John as a portfolio holder since 2009, and his advice and support over the years has been invaluable. His calm and well-considered approach has certainly helped me when my natural inclinations have been to be much more robust and trenchant. So, John, I'll really miss you. And I also want to thank you for all of your service to West Berkshire over the years and wish you a long and happy retirement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Right, I will now turn to agenda item 3, the minutes. I wish to move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of September 2020 be approved as a true and correct record. Councillor Doherty, I see.
Chairman, I would like to second those minutes.
Thank you. Now, is everyone happy with what I'm going to say in a slightly negative way? Is there anything that anyone wishes to raise about the minutes before I sign them? If I could say it that way around. I'm looking for blue hands. I'm not seeing any, so I'm assuming they're all happy. So I will sign these now.
Thank you, Chairman.
And I will return them to the office at the next opportunity that I have. Right, are there any, item 4, declarations of interest, Mr. Sheikh?
Thank you, Chairman. I've received one declaration from Councillor Claire Rolls, has declared an other registrable interest in agenda item 18A, as she is the Council's appointed representative on West Berkshire Citizens Advice Bureau. She'll therefore not be taking part in the debate or voting on this item. If a debate and vote are needed, she'll be an attendee for that part of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And members, are there any other declarations of interest you wish to make now? Again, I'm looking for blue hands and I'm not seeing any. Right. Item 5, petitions. Officers have not been notified that any petitions are due to be submitted. Members, do you have any petitions you wish to present to the meeting? If so, please raise the blue hand. I'm not seeing any. Can Mrs. Fraser confirm that?
No hands have been raised.
Thank you very much. I will now come on to public questions. I'm going to read a little bit out to you for this. And I'd like to thank, first of all members of the public who have submitted questions for this council's meeting. In accordance with the resolution passed at the council meeting on the 10th of September 2020, members of the public who have submitted questions and have notified us of their intention to do so within the agreed timescales are now permitted to be in attendance to hear the answer to their question, and they have the right to ask a supplementary question. I'm pleased to be able to welcome members of the public back to council meetings, even in this way. Please note that in accordance with the new processes, you will not need to say, I ask the question standing in my name. Your question will appear on screen and will be answered by the relevant portfolio holder. You will then be given the opportunity to ask a supplementary question if you have one, but please remember that this must be to clarify the response provided and not to introduce any new business. In accordance with paragraph 412(9) of the Constitution, where questioners have more than one question, only their first question will be answered. If, after all the other first questions have been asked and answered, and there is sufficient time, we will answer subsequent questions. Please note that the time limit for public questions is restricted to 30 minutes, and if your questions have not been answered in that time, you will receive a written response within 5 clear working days of the meeting. Now, unfortunately, Susan Millington is unable to join the meeting. She has asked a question and she will receive a written response to her question B on the agenda. Ross Clow, question F, Stuart Gawley, question J, and Jason Braidwood, question R, have not indicated that they wish to attend the meeting within these agreed timescales and will therefore receive written answers to their questions. So I'd like now to invite Councillor McKinnon to answer Mr. John Goatley's question, question A on the agenda. Once the question has been answered by Councillor McKinnon, Mr. Goatley will have the right to ask a supplementary question. So first of all, may I ask, is Mr. Goatley in our room now? Mrs. Fraser, can you assist me?
Chairman, I would ask Phil Rumans as the host if he could promote.
Mr. Rumans.
He's there, Chairman. He's unmuted himself. He's there, Chairman, and he's unmuted himself, but we can't hear him, can we?
Okay, Mr. Goatley, can you hear us? I don't know, Mr. Rumans, if you can help, but perhaps if we start by, there is the question on the screen as he's in the room. Councillor McKinnon, could you please answer the question? Hopefully, Mr. Goatley will be able to ask a supplementary if he has one at the time.
Yeah, certainly, Chairman. Thank you. And good evening, Mr. Goatley. I hope you're well, and thank you for your question. I believe you're referring to the surface water runoff from the A339 London Road Industrial Estate Junction. Drainage attenuation was constructed as part of this project, which restricts the surface water runoff rate to those that were in existence pre-construction. I can therefore confirm full consideration was given to the capacity of the sewer, the downstream water course, and the Tesco's culvert. Thanks, Chairman.
Right. Now, Mr. Goatley, do you have a supplementary if you're able to ask it?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Put on headphones. Yes, I do really. It was known at the time that the Tesco culvert is about half the flow of the Thames Water sewer. So is this a case of negligence? Because 2 into 1 just don't go, and we are getting flooded.
Thanks, Mr. Goatley. No, it isn't. I would reiterate that the flow from the new areas of hard construction are fully attenuated, and I'd be happy to ask officers to answer any more technical questions if you'd like to put them in writing. Thanks.
Right. Thank you very much. We now turn to question C, which is from Paula Saunderson. Thank you. Ms. Saunderson, are you here? That's Mr. Rumans, if you advise when she is. Please.
She's in the room.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, and we can hear you. That's wonderful. Thank you.
I'm in the room.
Councillor McKinnon again, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome, Ms. Saunderson. Thank you for your question. There's quite a comprehensive answer. So to date, the Council has received over £91 million of funding to respond to the pandemic. This figure can be broken down. Overall, there have been 29 different funding streams, although some of these overlap. So I've grouped them together as part of this response, and the figures are rounded to the nearest £1,000. So the first funding stream is the non-ring-fenced emergency expenditure grant. We've received £9,562,000. Then the income compensation scheme for lost sales, fees and charges, £2,043,000. Business grants and discretionary grants distributed from April to August, £29,484,000. The Council Tax Hardship Fund, £549,000. Business grants and discretionary grants distributed from November onwards, the new scheme, £5,368,000. The Business Services Support Grant, £109,000. The Reopening High Streets Safely Fund, £140,000. Home to School Transport Funding, £126,000. The Emergency Active Travel Fund, £619,000. The Infection Control Fund, £2,813,000. The Support to Clinically Extremely Vulnerable Individuals Fund, £63,000. The Test and Trace Service Support Grant, £540,000. The Test and Trace Support Payment Scheme, £106,000. The Contain Outbreak Management Fund, £1,268,000. The Emergency Assistance Grant for Food and Essential Supplies, £103,000. The Winter Grant Scheme, £279,000. The additional support for rough sleepers, £184,000. The Wellbeing for Education Return Grant, £32,000. Surge Funding Compliance and Enforcement, £59,000. And Business Rates Relief redistributed from central government, £37,800,000. That's total grant funding from central government of £91,246,000. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Ms Saunderson, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I did ask if it could be presented in tabular form, which might have saved a bit of time. Are you willing to publish this information in the COVID newsletter?
I see no reason why we can't do that, although I stand to be corrected, that's not my newsletter. What I would say, Ms Saunderson, is that we will publish this information, we do publish this information as part of our quarterly revenue budgetary report, which goes to executive and is released to the public. So we're certainly happy to publish the information, indeed it will be. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much indeed for your
Great,
question.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, thank you.
We now have question G from Alan Pearce. Please can I be advised when Mr. Pearce is in the room?
Mr. Pearce is here. He's unmuted himself, so hopefully he can.
Mr. Pearce, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Excellent. There's the question for Councillor Somna. Please.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Pearce, thank you for your question. As far as I'm aware, this is a piece of privately owned open land. I'm not aware that it's formally designated as a swale or has any drainage feature for that matter. As for its purpose, maintenance and the reason for any work carried out on it over the past years, regrettably, I'm unable to provide further answer. I can only suggest, respectfully, that you contact the landowner for further details on that.
Mr. Pearce, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you for your answer, and I've got no question. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. We come to question I from Paul Morgan. Please may I be advised when Mr. Morgan is in the room and can hear us.
Paul Morgan's in the room. It's just unmuted himself now. Can you hear us, Paul?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Everyone hear me?
We can. Thank you very much.
Very good, very good, very good.
I've got Councillor McKinnon again to answer this question.
Okay.
Thanks, Chairman, and good evening again, Mr. Morgan. And yeah, I believe this is the question that I should have answered at executive last time and I misunderstood it. So hopefully second time lucky. It is another full breakdown of additional spend. So again, a comprehensive answer for you. So additional spend on top of the previously advised figures are included here. So firstly, the Avison Young Development Brief, that's a known figure, £85,652. We had to pay an extra fee to Avison Young for a consultation input via the Zoom sessions that I know you and others took full part in. That was £9,900, again, a known figure. The report from SSL was £15,975. We paid a flood risk assessment fee to Stuart Michael of £1,750. That's a known figure. An estimated figure for the demolition of the clubhouse, the porta cabins and the concrete slabs is £70,000. That's an estimate. Again, another estimated figure, the works to create the temporary recreational sport area is £121,000. A known figure, a past cost of subsidised pitch hire for Newbury Football Club, £1,000. The cost of metal sheeting security on the clubhouse, £9,273. For the replacement football ground, which is referenced, again, those proposals are still ongoing, and to date those proposals are cost neutral. There will be, I'm sure, future consultancy work on the estate, but the extent and cost of that has yet to be formally agreed. So the total of those figures I've given you is £315,000. Thanks, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. Mr. Morgan, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Yeah, thanks for that comprehensive breakdown, Councillor McKinnon. My concern is that with a project of this nature and this complexity and this size, it's very important, as I'm sure you will agree, to actually keep 100% track of everything that's being spent on the London Rapid Justice Estate. Otherwise, you cannot ascertain whether it's financially viable or not. I've done a quick calculation. There's other areas that you probably haven't covered. I don't agree that the football ground will be cost neutral. I can't see how that will be the case. But I look at my calculation, I reckon you're going to be looking at about £2.5–3 million before you get anywhere further on this.
Are you working this into a question?
My supplementary question is, what assurance can you provide me and the rest of everyone listening that you will keep 100% track of all costs, every single cost associated with this project, so that we can ascertain the financial viability of the project? That's my question.
Okay, Councillor McKinnon.
Thanks, Chairman, and thanks, Mr. Morgan. I have every faith in the project boards and the officers concerned at their ability and capability of tracking the costs accurately.
Right, thank you. Question L is from Lee McDougall. Please may I be advised when Mr. McDougall is in the room?
I'm in the room. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Thank you. Right. I have to answer your question, Councillor McKinnon again.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And good evening, Mr. McDougall. I hope you're well. To reopen the old ground on a temporary basis for dedicated football use by a number of groups is not possible for two reasons. Firstly, the Council wishes to make the area available for all recreational users, and where dedicated use by different football groups would cause the area to be overused, the grass area degraded, and to the general disadvantage of all users, including football. This reflects the advice that the Council has received from Sport England. The grass area will be lightly maintained by the Council, but not as a dedicated sports pitch. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. And do you have a supplementary, Mr. McDougall?
Yes, if I could, please. So the question is, what evidence of need do you have for the use you're going to give it? We've just not seen any evidence of need for the use that you're going to put for the recreational space. So could you advise on what evidence of need you have?
Right, Councillor McKinnon.
I can advise that the ground's going to be made available for all sorts of different groups. I don't have a specific piece of evidence to give you right now, but I'm very confident that the public in the Newbury area will be able to use the ground for recreational facilities where one didn't exist before.
So no need. Okay, thanks.
Question M from Vaughan Miller. May I be advised?
Hello.
All right. Hello, we can hear you. That's good. Councillor McKinnon again.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Mr. Miller. Looking at this question, it's not possible for the old ground to be given over for dedicated football use in the period between now and when development may take place. The reasons are the same as those I've given to the previous question.
Right. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Miller?
Yes, I do. To be honest, I find it frankly astonishing, the answer that Councillor McKinnon has given. It is a football ground, and it is meant to be used for that purpose. So given that it's been over 2.5 years since it's been closed, prematurely, as we all know, and at least another 3 years before any possible development might start, I'll ask again, why will the Council not consider exploring options with the community it represents to reopen the ground for football? After all, it is a football ground with a status as an asset of community value. Please,
Councillor McKinnon.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Mr. Miller. The council is working very hard to re-provision football facilities for the Newbury and West Berkshire public. That's been made clear on several occasions. As to you re-asking your first question, I'm afraid the same answer will be given.
Okay, thank you. Question P is from Maria Morgan. Please may I be advised when she's in the room.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, my work address has popped up.
No, that's wonderful. We can hear you. Thank you. And just for a change, I've got Councillor Hilary Cole to answer a question.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your question, Ms. Morgan. Thank you. Your question concerning architectural merits of new development over the preservation of existing built development. Design's always subjective. And one person's ideal is another's carbuncle. In other words, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The council cannot agree that this development would be more in keeping with Basingstoke than Newbury. Otherwise, it would not have granted planning permission. Furthermore, both of the developments quoted are bringing much needed life back into the centre of Newbury.
Well, thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Ms. Morgan?
I do, yes. I'd just like to say, in the context of the pandemic, over the past 8 months, I think we've learnt locally and nationally that families living in flats, particularly high-rise flats, have suffered more than any others, especially when those flats have little or no outdoor space. So I'd like to ask the councillors if they will in future, when planned developments are coming for approval, if they'll take into account the mental and physical health needs of our community in terms of creating areas of outdoor space and also retaining leisure and sporting facilities.
Right, thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you. Our planners always take into account amenity space when looking at planning applications, and we have standards for amenity space for all developments.
Right, thank you very much. Question Q is from John Stewart. Please may I be advised when he is in the room.
John Stewart should be here, Chairman.
Mr. Stewart, can you hear us? Or rather, can we hear you?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Hello.
It's back to Councillor McKinnon to answer this one.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, Mr. Stewart. There are no outstanding liabilities with St Modwen. The costs of £175,212 are in the public domain and were specifically allowed for within the development agreement, and where St Modwen were entitled to reclaim these costs should the council be unable to enact the contract, as turned out to be the case. These costs were enshrined in the contract under two separate clauses, 12.6a, £45,000, and clause 23 of Schedule 2 at £130,212. These costs covered legal fees for drawing up the development agreement, legal fees associated with potential CPO action, fees in respect of potential site delivery for Bayer, a presentation at the Newbury Vision Conference, and general project management services. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, just I didn't quite hear the figure you mentioned, Councillor McKinnon. Was that 175,962?
175,212.
Oh, 212. Okay. I had a look at your list of spending over £500, and there's a value of 175,962 from the 18th of April 2019, a payment to St Modwen, classed as an unclassified chief executive supplies and service. So it's just slightly different to your figure by about 700 odd pounds. I don't know whether that's something you'd like to explain or perhaps write back on.
I was going to say, Mr. Stewart, yeah, you won't be surprised to say I don't have the full breakdown of that right now. 750 quid out. Yep, we can certainly look into that for you.
It's just, yeah, because that's what's in the public domain. The figure I see there is 175,962.
Right. We'll make sure you get a written response to that. But thank you for bringing it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stewart. We now go back to Mr. Goatley for question H. Mr. Goatley, you're still there, are you? Or are you back with us? Oh, no. Someone else popped up and it wasn't you.
hear me
Who's
now?
that?
There you are. Hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear us? Can we hear you?
We can. Thank you,
hear me
Chairman.
now?
Excellent. Right. The question is to be answered by Councillor Sumner.
Indeed. Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Goatley, for your question. We currently have no plans to carry out water quality testing of this watercourse. I'm sure you're aware that the Northcroft stream takes surface runoff from approximately 70 hectares of Newbury Town Centre, and I'm not aware of any recent significant changes that would result in an increase in pollution. I will, however, arrange for an officer who is familiar with that watercourse to make a visit and to see if there are any obvious signs of pollution.
Right. You have a supplementary question, Mr. Goatley?
Yes, I do. A lot of the pollution that we've seen, even recently, was oil floating on the surface. Now, it's very likely that the council is actually the landlord of the polluters on the industrial estate. So what's your policy on taking action against your own tenants if it's proved that they are polluting?
Right, Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Mr. Goatley. I would suggest that if there's action to be taken, it shouldn't actually matter who is creating the issue. I believe that we would treat all cases in a like fashion. Hopefully, we won't be causing our own problems, but certainly we'll be able to look into that, as I said, and identify where the issue lies.
Right. Thank you very much. We can now go back to question D from Paula Saunderson again. Are you still with us?
I am, but my broadband is intermittent, so I don't expect Councillor McKinnon to read out the answers to my questions D and E. A written response will be sufficient, and perhaps a tabular format might be helpful.
Oh, that's very kind. Okay, well, we'll ensure that you get a written reply to both those questions. I'm sure Councillor McKinnon will be on the case.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Certainly, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Saunderson.
Thank you. In that case, question K.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Question K from Alan Pearce. Mr. Pearce, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Chairman.
Excellent. I'm afraid it's the Councillor McKinnon show. Over to you for another answer, Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairman. And yeah, sorry about that. And good evening again, Mr. Pearce. Thank you for your question. The catchment study cost £6,250 and was commissioned as a direct result of concerns expressed by a number of residents on London Road about flooding of gardens and the increased risk of property flooding. Sadly, this is just one of the detrimental impacts of climate change that we're seeing more of this across the country. One of our duties as lead local flood authority is to investigate possible sources of flood risk from surface water and ordinary water courses, and where feasible and practical, to bid for central government funding to introduce flood alleviation measures. As a council, we've been very successful at bringing in this funding to places like Newbury, Thatcham, Winterbourne, Purley and Pinebourne, to name just a few, and they've benefited significantly from those measures. I am pleased to let you know that as a direct result of the London Road catchment study, the Environment Agency has provisionally allocated a further £45,000 in the 2021-22 financial year towards detailed investigation and design of flood mitigation measures for the properties on London Road. This funding is currently indicative, will only receive full confirmation from the Environment Agency in January. However, if it is approved, we'll be in a position to design and bid for further funding for infrastructure measures to mitigate the flood risk to London Road properties. Thanks.
Right, thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Pearce?
Yes, thank you for the answer. Can you just tell me, have you supplied the Environment Agency with all the information they need, all the documentation? Are you just waiting now for the funding?
I can't imagine we haven't provided all of that information, Mr. Pearce. I can only assume we have.
Could you find out for me, if you would, please, and just confirm that they have been supplied all the information they need, if you would?
I'm sure they have done, given they've provisionally allocated the funding, but I'll get super confirmation for you.
If you would. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. We have Vaughan Miller. Can we hear you, Mr. Miller?
Hello? Yep.
Hello, yes, we can. Right, Councillor Wollaston, please, to answer this question.
Sorry, just unmuting myself.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. It will be available in the same way as other public recreational open space. Free access to all users who will be expected to use common sense and courtesy to other users as appropriate. If scratch teams of any description wish to use the area for informal sport, they will be free to do so on the basis of first come, first serve.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Miller?
Yes, on this, did the council consult with any of the obvious stakeholders, like representatives of the local football community, other sports organisations, or even the town council, before deciding this was the best way to invest 191k of its taxpayers' money?
Right,
the view, Mr. Miller, was that the location was crucial to the economic development proposals for the centre of Newbury, and this was the best use of the land that we could see.
Thank you. And Mr. Miller, you have the last question on the agenda, question O, which we stay with Councillor Wollaston to answer.
Thank you for your question again, Mr. Miller. The answer is no. The area's open public space will be available for any recreational use, whether informal five-a-side, rounders, or any other physical activity that promotes health and well-being.
Right. A supplementary question, Mr. Miller?
Yes, I mean, we are in a full council meeting. So that I'd like to remind every single one of the Conservative councillors here that all of you have backed every single proposal coming from Councillors McKinnon and Wollaston and their predecessors over the last 4.5 years.
Is this a question?
Facility, I'm coming to it. Deny this facility to the public of Newbury. You've had opportunity since you were elected in 2019.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order.
Reject everyone.
Point of order, Chairman.
Mr. Miller, can you just pause a moment? Can you just pause a moment? Councillor Bridgman, a point of order.
Thank you, Chairman. This is not a question. This is a statement. If Mr. Vaughan Miller wants to ask a question, let him ask a question.
Well, I did actually start by saying, is there a question in this? Mr. Miller, could you actually put the question, perhaps not so much in context, that you would like a supplementary answer to, please?
I was muted, right. So, yes, I have this supplementary question. So, is there for this council, all of you councillors, happy that it will be leaving the Newbury football community, kids, ladies and men's teams, short of one quality pitch for the next few years, and at least for 5 to 6 years in total? Are you happy with that?
Right. Councillor Wollaston.
The answer, Mr. Miller, is I would not be happy with that, but that's not the case. There is a firm football strategy in place which will ensure there is ample supply as needed.
In 5 years.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. Members, well, first of all, may I thank all members of the public for attending. And they can, of course, continue watching this live stream of the meeting if they so wish. Now, members, I'm sorry, I've got a little apology to make. One thing, I was so keen to sign the minutes, I should have asked for a show of hands. So I know I've already signed them, but please may I have a show of hands to see if, oh, you're letting me off the hook lightly. I'm very grateful.
You're
right.
approved. Thank you.
Are you happy, Mr. Sheikh, with that?
Yes, I'm very happy. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Very remiss of me. Not something I normally do. Item 7, membership of committees, and we have not been notified of any changes. Item 8, motions from previous meeting. Now, members, I'd like to note the responses to 3 motions set out in the agenda, which were tabled at previous council meetings. As the motions were discussed at either the Executive or Personnel Committee, we will not be revisiting the discussion on any of them. Members, I'd now like to ask you to note the information in the agenda relating to each of the committees listed in agenda items 9 to 14. These are to be taken on block merely to note that they have or indeed have not met. Item 15, the Minerals and Waste Local Plan, proposed submission consultation. which is on pages 25 to 140. I'd like to ask Councillor Hilary Cole to present the report and formally move the recommendations, which appear on pages 25 and 26. Could you just please formally move the recommendations, Councillor Cole?
Thank you, Chairman. Just as we have to have an up-to-date local development plan, we also have to have an up-to-date minerals and waste local plan.
Can I just pause you, Councillor Cole? Could you just move this so I can see if it's seconded? Then I'll come straight back.
Sorry, yes.
That's quite all right. Could you just formally move the recommendation?
I formally move the recommendation, Chairman. I usually do it at the end of my...
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm cutting you short. I'll come straight back to you. Councillor Vickers, I believe you wish to second?
Just to say I'm happy to second the motion, Chairman.
And presumably you'll withhold your right.
I will reserve my right to speak.
Your right, Stephen. Thank you. Right, Councillor Cole.
Thank you. Shall I start again then, Chairman?
Please do.
Just as we have to have an up-to-date local development plan, we also have to have an up-to-date minerals and waste local plan. This is the first minerals and waste local plan specifically related to West Berkshire and represents the culmination of several years of work by the minerals and waste team in this specialised area of planning. The most recent and outdated plan was Berkshire-wide and adopted in 1997. Having our own plan will allow us to make informed decisions based on local information and issues. The plan sets out comprehensive policies to guide minerals and waste development in the district until 2037. It will also assist in achieving national and local priorities relating to sustainable development, waste minimisation, and delivering homes and essential infrastructure. Notable national policy requirements include minerals and waste proposals to demonstrate how they will minimise their impact on the causes of climate change, deliver at least 10% net gains for biodiversity, and encourage sustainable modes of transport. The plan will also help in achieving the Council strategy priorities to develop local infrastructure to support and grow the local economy and maintain a green district. A steady and adequate supply of locally sourced minerals provides raw materials to deliver essential infrastructure, and a high standard of restoration will be required to deliver net gains for biodiversity. Members should note that just as we have to demonstrate a 5-year land supply for housing, we also have to demonstrate a 7-year supply for minerals. The proposed site applications are for sharp sand and gravel, Tidney Bed in Ufton Nerbert, and for soft sand, one site within the AONB in my ward of Cheveley and Coldash. A local waste assessment has also been conducted, and there is no need for additional waste management capacity or new waste sites over the planned period. The Minerals and Waste Local Plan has already been through several stages of public consultation, with the Issues and Options consultation in early 2014, a sites consultation on all sites submitted for consideration of the plan in summer 2016, and consultation on the preferred options in spring 2017. The proposed submission version of the Minerals and Waste Plan represents what the Council considers to be a sound plan and fit to be submitted for independent examination. The statutory consultation period will run for 6 weeks from the 4th of January to the 15th of February 2021 and will allow all West Berkshire residents, landowners, developers and businesses to have their say on the proposals. The plan will then be submitted to the Secretary of State for independent examination in July 2021 with a view to adoption in the summer of 2022. Finally, I would like to thank all officers, past and present, for their tenacity and diligence in producing the plan which is before us tonight. We're now at the final hurdle, and I move that Council adopts the recommendations at point 2, 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 as set out on page 25 of the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Now, may I invite anyone wishing to speak on this item to indicate? I have Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly,
there's a lot of talk in the document about sustainability, maintaining biodiversity. Can we have an assurance that those won't just be buzzwords, that really will happen? And in particular, with transport, can we see, as far as possible, materials transported from these sites via rail where available, and water, including the Kennett and Avon Canal?
Right, I'm sure Councillor Cole will take those comments and in her summary at the end of the debate. Is there anyone else wishing to add to the debate? Now, I am seeing no one. Mrs. Fraser, am I correct?
Chairman, just Councillor Vickers, obviously, to...
Well, I was going to come to him before I go back to Councillor Cole. Oh, Councillor Abbs, I think you've just put your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. Really just to do with the biodiversity side of life again. And
Can you just, sorry, Councillor Abbs, can you just move perhaps a little closer to your microphone? You're very muffled, and I'm certainly struggling to hear you. I think others might too as well. Oh.
Is that any better?
That's much better, yes.
I can't get any closer to the microphone now. So, yeah, so the question is really about biodiversity. And of course, we have this 1.1 equation built in that for every time we take one out, we must put 1.1 back. The thing I'm really keen for as a district to enable is that we deal that within the district. We don't do some kind of carbon offsetting with our biodiversity and just outsource it outside of West Berkshire. So other than that, I'm quite happy with the proposal.
Right, thank you, Councillor Abbs. I've still got Councillor Vickers' hand up. I'm just seeing if any other members, before I come to the seconder, wish to add anything else. I'm just pausing 2 or 3 seconds. I'd see no one. Is that correct, Mrs. Fraser?
Yes, Chairman.
Oh, all right, Mr. Shake. Thank you very much. Councillor Vickers, as seconder.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to second the motion. After all, this is only to agree that it goes out to a formal public consultation. I do note that the consultation will be done in parallel with that for the Regulation 18 on the local development plan, which is starting very shortly as well. And of course, there is potentially a link between the two. So my only concern is, and I refer to page 80 of the agenda paper, paragraph 479, and the map on that page. There's a very large area of protected mineral areas, or whatever they're called. I don't know what the technical term is. Look at my papers again, but I think you know what I mean. What do they call? Safeguarded, mineral safeguarded areas. And of course, if they are also involving sites for non-mineral development, there is an obligation on the developers to carry out investigations, which my concern is that, is it possible that on sites that we are looking to see promoted within our local development plan for housing, that they could be delayed somewhat by being on land which is subject to mineral safeguarding? And if so, what do we do about it? Who gives way? Do we adjust a local development plan, or do we basically remove a substantial part of our potential mineral resource from future use? Because of course, once you've built houses on the area, you can't then dig it up for sand or anything else later. So it's not referring to particular sites, but I'm wondering what the process is for making sure that that conflict isn't giving us a problem. That's my only doubt that I have, but I'm sure that you know, the comments that come from the consultation will be addressing that, or our officers will be addressing when we see the results coming back from both sets of consultation.
Absolutely, thank you very much. In that case, as a proposer, I go back to Councillor Hilary Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. Restoration of sites has always been an important part of the minerals extraction programme in West Berkshire, and I think we've always ensured that the sites have been restored to a high standard, and that the biodiversity on the site, which is what we're referring to in the plan, is installed to a very high standard. With regard to transport, Councillor Marsh, there are no rail or water connections at Cheveley for soft sand, but of course the soft sand site at Cheveley is just behind Cheveley Services, which has a direct connection to the M4 and the A34. As I said in my introduction, we are resourcing these minerals locally, so they won't have to travel as far as other minerals should we have had to import them. With regard to Councillor Vickers' comments about the conflict between the land use for development and mineral extraction, I think our planners, both the minerals and waste team and the planning policy team, work closely together to ensure that there's no conflict in this area. And on a final note, really, and this is just my personal opinion, I have to say that I would look to the development industry to look at alternative methods of construction that don't use our minerals. We can't manufacture minerals. We are extracting minerals from the land which have been there for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. It is not an infinite source. And I feel very, very strongly that the message has got to be to the development industry that they look for modern and sustainable methods of development that don't require soft sand, sharp sand and gravel in any construction programs. Thank you, Chairman. So I move that this goes to consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. So the procedure now is I'm going to hand over to Mr. Sheikh, who will read each name out, and you can say whether you're for, against, or abstaining. Mr. Sheikh.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members, I'm going to ask you to vote on the recommendation as set out in the report, page 25 and 26. Start with Councillors Adrian Abbs.
For.
Councillor Steve R. de Walter.
For.
Peter Argyle.
For.
Phil Barnett.
For.
Jeff Beck.
For.
Dennis Bennyworth.
For.
Dominic Boyk.
For.
Graham Bridgman.
For.
Jeff Brooks.
For.
Jeff Kent.
For.
Hilary Cole.
For.
James Cole.
For.
Jeremy Cotton.
For.
Caroline Culver.
For.
Lee Dillon.
For.
Lynn Doherty.
For.
Billy Drummond. Is Billy still there? Councillor Drummond.
For.
Thank you. Clive Hooker.
For.
Gareth Hurley.
For.
Owen Jeffrey. Councillor Jeffrey. Can I see? Thank you. Rick Jones.
For.
Nasser Castle.
For.
Alan Lowe.
For.
Tony Linden.
For.
Royce Longton.
For.
Ross McKinnon.
For.
Alan Macro.
For.
Tom Marino.
For.
David Marsh.
For.
Steve Masters.
For.
I believe Jeff Mays is not present. No. Andy Moore.
For.
Graham Pask.
For.
Eric Patton.
For.
Claire Rolls.
For.
Garth Simpson. Garth Simpson. I can't see Garth Simpson.
No?
Phil, can you?
Thank you, Phil.
4.
Richard Somner.
4.
Joe Stewart.
4.
Martha Vickers.
4.
Tony Vickers.
4.
Andy Williamson.
4.
Keith Woodhams.
4.
Howard Wollaston.
4.
Thank you very much. I confirm that the motion has been carried. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sheikh. Members, we now move to item 16, which is recommendations of the West Berkshire Council Independent Remuneration Panel 2020. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to formally move the recommendations as laid out in page 141 of your pack, with the amendment which was tabled shortly before, delaying the implementation date.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon, I believe you wish to second.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I reserve my right.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Chairman. When the Independent Review Panel last met in November 2017, they recommended that the panel reconvene in May 2020 so that the impact of the boundary review, which came into effect after the May 2019 election, on allowances could be assessed. This was in recognition that moving from having 52 ward members to 43, while representing the same number of residents, was bound to have an impact on the workload of every councillor. The onset of the COVID pandemic meant that this review was delayed until September 2020. Before setting out why I am proposing that we accept the recommendations of the panel, I would first like to thank the panel for their report, for the time that they gave to interview and survey our existing elected members, and for the benchmarking the allowances here in West Berkshire against others. It certainly makes interesting reading to learn that following Slough councillors voting to accept an increase in allowances last week, our members here in West Berkshire have one of the lowest basic rates in not only the country, but in the county. The primary reason I am proposing that we accept the recommendations of the panel is that as I look around this chamber, I recognise the need to attract a greater diversity of councillor representation here in West Berkshire. Section 3.4 of the report highlights the fair remuneration principle. It states, the basic allowance should encourage people from a wide range of backgrounds and with a wide range of skills to serve as local councillors. Those who participate in and contribute to the democratic process should not suffer unreasonable financial disadvantage as a result of doing so. Councillors need to be reasonably compensated for the expenses they incur and the time that they commit. For each and every councillor here tonight, that time and expense may differ, and therefore each person present needs to consider that fair principle. As well as recommending an increase in the basic allowance, this report has two other important recommendations that I think going forward to 2023 will be important for us to have in place. On page 163 of your packs at 4.5, it talks about the changes to the dependent carers allowance, and this is to base it on two rates, one for general care and one for specialist care. This will enable specialist care provision to be reimbursed for the actual cost incurred by the councillor upon production of receipts, and will enable those with caring responsibilities to consider standing forward. I'd also draw your attention to page 164 of the report, or 4.53 as an item. I was pleased to read that the panel congratulated us for my motion that introduced a council parental leave policy for members. And I concur with the recommendation that it should be promoted actively to potential and prospective councillors. I am more than happy that both of these important recommendations are promoted as part of a wider Be a Councillor programme led by this council and supported by all political groups to increase the diversity of councillor representation. So yes, members, I would ask you all to support the recommendations of this report, with only one exception, the timing. I know that the timing of this report could not have come at a more difficult time for us all. Not only are we living with COVID, but we are living with financial uncertainty for many of our residents. While I completely support the need to review allowances for the reasons I've already outlined, I know that this may appear an insensitive time to do so. I'm also aware that some of those same financial uncertainties may face many of our members. And as leader of this authority, I want to find a careful and considered way of implementing this report, which is why prior to this meeting starting, you will have all received an amendment that proposes that while we accept the recommendations in full, we do not do so until April 2022. This ensures the recommendations are in place prior to recruitment for 2023 elections, but avoids increasing allowances when others may be facing no increase to their income. I put before you the recommendations.
Councillor Doherty, thank you. Members who wishes to speak? I've got Councillor Marsh, Councillor Bridgman. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Green Group of Councillors, I'm calling on members of the Council to reject the amendment and subsequently the substantive motion tonight. We feel that the amendment, which was available to members less than an hour before the meeting, smacks of being a last-minute compromise and a bit of a cop-out. We know this will be unpopular, so let's delay it for a bit. We don't think that's an honest or sensible approach. After all, who knows what the financial situation of the country or this council will be like in April 2022? We just can't say. When all is said and done, this motion, whether amended or not, will still say, let's vote for a pay rise. And we don't think, as Greens, that that is right, however long it is or isn't delayed. On the whole, West Berkshire councillors have done quite well financially in recent years, compared with many, perhaps most, of the people in the district. There was a notorious 16.5% increase in May 2015, of which more in a moment. That was followed by a further 2% in April 2018, because the basic allowance is linked to council staff pay rises. And for that reason, we've already had one increase this year. Council staff received 2.75% pay award in April 2020, which means councillors were also entitled to 2.75%. So the current proposal for about 3% on top of that, plus more for executive members, the leader of the council, the opposition leader, some shadow portfolio holders, and for the first time the minority group leader, would be the fourth increase in just over 5 years, or fourth increase in 7 years if it is deferred. Now, even in normal times, we don't believe that would be justified. And as the council leader has just said, these are far from normal times. Many businesses have lost their income, some have gone bust, others fear that they might. Unemployment is set to go up by at least 1 million by the middle of next year. That's going to affect people in West Berkshire. More and more people are living in poverty, even in relatively prosperous West Berkshire. More and more people are reliant on food banks, even in relatively prosperous West Berkshire. Is this really the moment for the representatives of the people of this district to say yes to a fourth pay rise in 5 years or 7 years, depending on when it's paid? Is this really the time to vote to pay ourselves twice what some of the poorest in our community receive through universal credit? If you vote for this, what would you say to someone who will be reliant on charity for their child's Christmas present and the West Berkshire Food Bank for their Christmas dinner when they say, why have we just voted ourselves another pay rise? Quick word, if I may, Mr. Chairman, about that 16.5% increase and why it still resonates today. If you Google West Berkshire Council allowances, 4 of the first 8 hits are variations on the theme. Even now, West Berkshire councillors award themselves a 16.5% pay rise. That huge increase, a matter of weeks after the 2015 election, and as the council was about to embark on a series of swinging cuts to local services, caused great anger. And to see the very people who imposed the cuts enjoy an enormous inflation-busting pay rise added insult to injury. We can talk about being non-party political about it, but that proposal was voted for unanimously by 44 Conservative councillors, of whom 15 are still members, and of whom 6 are current executive members. I really hope you can see in hindsight the serious reputational damage that episode caused to West Berkshire Council. And I hope you can see that tonight there's a possibility to make amends for that in part by saying no. What do people think of their elected representatives? It's not unusual to hear people say they're only in it for what they can get, or it's one rule for us, another for them. A completely understandable reaction when you look at the behaviour of certain cabinet ministers and former advisors to the Prime Minister, but it's not fair to members of this council. I agree with what the council leader says. They work hard for their constituents, but vote to accept yet another pay rise. And that is what many members of the public, especially those struggling to cope with the effects of the pandemic, will conclude. Finally, I fully accept, the Green Party fully accepts we do need to attract more candidates to stand for the election to the council, more women, more people from a more diverse range of backgrounds. But it's a complex issue that will not be resolved by simply increasing the allowance.
30 seconds.
It hasn't worked in the past. We will be putting forward our own proposals to examine the whole question of how to achieve a council that is more truly representative of the district as a whole. In the meantime, as far as this tonight is concerned, I do urge people, don't vote on party lines. Vote with your conscience and your principles. Please vote against the amendment and the substantive motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. For those of us who were actually in the chamber in 2015, 16.5% is lies, damn lies and green statistics. It wasn't 16.5%. That took into account rolling in a number of allowances which weren't then ever paid again. And the total amount was, I think, it was a large amount, and I'll come back to that in a moment. I don't deny it was a large amount. It was about 13% from memory. Don't have the number precisely in front of me. The reason it was 13% is because, and I wasn't in council prior to that, because I think council took its eye off the ball and did not do what it then did, which was to align council allowances with the pay rates of staff, so that if the staff received a pay increase, so did the councillors. That removed the argument about increasing allowances and making our own rules. And I fully endorse that linking. And indeed, if Councillor Marsh is saying that we shouldn't have had increases of 2.2% and 2.75%, then presumably he's also saying that council staff shouldn't have received those increases. And I absolutely reject that. Now, Councillor Doherty, as usual, stole quite a few of my words, but I trust members will forgive me if I say some things in a slightly different way that she's already said. In 2019, as she said, council reduced from 52 to 43 members. And one of my submissions to this group is that the rebasing of allowances is justified. And this is not a raising of pay rates in the way of annual percentage increases. It's a rebasing. Had we still got a 52-member council as we did then, the budget for allowances at today's rates, so based on previous report and excluding this proposed uprating, would be a little under £590,000. This report is proposing a total spend of just under £507,000. And I submit that that properly reflects the amount of work that each of the members in the chamber does in relation to special allowances and to their personal allowance as a member and to special allowances as, for example, myself as a member of executive. Now, I'll go back to that meeting in 2015 when we agreed that increase. And I'm sure that those of us who were first elected in 2015 will vividly remember that independent remuneration report. And more to the point, that one of the first things we ever had to do as members of this council was to vote on it. In proposing acceptance of that recommendation, the then leader of council, Councillor Gordon Lundy, said that members' allowances could always be a controversial issue. Well, no change there. But that low levels of remuneration would make it very difficult to attract a high calibre of candidates to a difficult and challenging role. He also said that that would mean that too many local councillors were elderly or wealthy. He suggested that levels of remuneration needed to be set at a level where a wide range of people would be willing to serve as a councillor. Now, a while ago, and this was pre-COVID, I took part in an induction session for new officers alongside the Chief Executive. And one of the questions that we were asked was whether we thought that we were paid too little, too much, or about right. My answer was very much along the lines of Gordon Lundy's contribution to that meeting back in 2015. Namely, that if electors wanted more people like me in the council, keep the allowances down, in fact, reduce them. If instead they want to attract a diversity of candidates, you need to have allowances that reflect the real cost of being a councillor, taking into account that our allowances now, and proposed in this report, contain a significant and explicit public service discount. So my report, my view is this report is fair and the proposal is justified. However, I fully recognise the economic times we find ourselves in and the reasons that the leader proposes a deferment in the amendment. So I also fully concur with that proposed amendment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. Councillor Marino.
Chairman. Yeah, I agree that we should accept the report from the West Berkshire Council Independent Remuneration Panel, and I echo the comments made by Councillors Doherty and Bridgman. As one of the youngest members on the council, I believe the second youngest, I haven't been in the workforce for very long, and I don't have the same access to the level of accumulated resources that some of my older colleagues might do. So whilst I'm fully aware that putting myself forward as a candidate for council was a personal choice in which any form of financial gain wasn't a factor, to run so I could represent the community that I've lived in for most of my life, I can't deny that the allowance given to me by the council, and it is an allowance, not pay, let us be clear, Councillor Marsh, assists me in carrying out the duties that I was elected to carry out. So whilst I'm in complete agreement that we should defer the introduction of the increase until April 2022, given the unprecedented difficult times we're in, I thoroughly disagree with Councillor Marsh and his fellow group members that an increase, which would still leave us below neighbouring councils, is wrong. Recently, equality and diversity has been a prominent topic of discussion, and it's been touched on tonight by a few people. And I've heard many voices, a lot on the opposition side, calling for a greater diversity of members, particularly with regards to age. And this is very easy to say. However, let me be clear: if you want more younger councillors like me on the council, there has to be something commensurate in place to help us do the job. And with this in mind, I fully support the recommendations of the panel. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Marino. Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify, Chairman, that it's we will be moving to a debate on the substantive as well, and there will be an opportunity to speak on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're doing the amendment first. If that's
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. And just to mention, it's disappointing that an amendment was made only 1 hour before the beginning of this meeting. Our group actually asked to make an amendment several days ago to the effect of postponing making a decision on this, and we were told that it was not possible to accept that amendment. So I just wanted to put that on the record, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm sure we can get the explanation for that. I have no other hands up, so I'm going to ask Councillor Dillon as seconder to speak.
So, Chairman, just for clarity, I'm speaking here on the amendment, am I, rather than the substantive debate. So, correct. I think in terms of the amendment, Mr. Chairman, it's about it's looking at what the IRP have said in its collective, and the leader outlined that in her introductory points. I think probably on the whole subject for debate this evening, talking about that diversity and how it allows members to participate. But what we also have to be absolutely aware of is the context in which we operate. And within COVID, the sacrifices that people are having to go through, it's absolutely right that we make the decision tonight, and that's what this amendment allows us to do. It allows us to make the decision tonight, but to defer that coming into play. And I think that's probably where it differs from Councillor Culver's maybe proposed amendment, and why it is therefore allowable, because it allows for it to be made, the decision to be made this evening. So I've got more points to make, and particularly in response to Councillor Marsh, which I'm happy to make in summation to the main debate, Mr. Chairman, and happy to move on at this point.
Okay, all right. Councillor Dillon, what I'm going to do is, Mr. Sheikh, will you just please, for total clarity for all members, just inform us about the procedure that we're now debating the amendment. So back to Councillor Doherty, could you just run through then what we will be doing?
Yes, so as outlined, the amendment is going to be voted, and once it has sufficient votes to be carried, it will be the recommendation, the amendment will become a part of the substantive recommendation, and then we will vote on that, and that can have its own debate. So if,
yes,
with your permission, Chairman, I can now move to.
Not yet.
Sorry. Okay.
Not yet.
Okay.
No, you get a little bit. I just that clarity. That was certainly my understanding, because I just wanted to confirm before moving away from Councillor Dillon as seconder, not to ensure that he wasn't missing out on any opportunity for further comment. I'm going to now go back, as Councillor Dillon was happy that he has made comments on the amendment. I'm going to go back to Councillor Doherty as the proposer to talk about, to make any further points that she has picked up on the amendment. We will then vote on the amendment. I will then, that will be the substantive motion, and hopefully only new points will be made on it rather than reiterations of what we've heard, but we can have a debate on the substantive motion as amended, that is by deferring should it go through.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor Law?
Yes, if you actually read the amendment accepts the recommendations.
Right.
And then if we vote to accept the amendment, we're accepting the recommendations plus the deferment.
And
so
that
it wouldn't make sense, therefore, to go back and discuss the substantive, because the amendment they've voted for changes the substantive. It actually agrees it.
Right, Mr. Sheikh.
Let me just clarify this. Recommendations are set out on page 141. They are from 2.1 to 2.3. 2.1 of the recommendation refers to paragraph 4.19 of the report, and we are amending paragraph 4.19x with the words as follows: that the new scheme of allowances to be agreed by the council be implemented with effect from the beginning of the 2022-23 financial year, brackets 1st of April 2022, at which time the current scheme of allowances will be revoked. That's the amendment that you're going to be voting on.
Chairman, point of order.
Yeah, go on, Councillor Bridgman.
Just to clarify and follow up what Councillor Law just said, and ask Mr. Sheikh whether or not we are voting to insert the date of 2022-23 and at the after financial year 1st of April 2022, that is the amendment. The amendment is to those dates, or is the amendment the entire phrase?
Thank you. It is the amendment to the date.
Okay, I was really clear in my mind at the start of this as how we were going to proceed. Mr. Sheikh, in very simple terms, when we come to do the vote, are we voting on just the amendment? Will we have to go through the vote again as on the substantive motion?
Yes, you will.
So in that case, we can still have a further, hopefully fairly brief debate about any other points that people wish to raise. Is that correct?
Once that becomes a substantive motion, yes.
That is what I thought. Councillor Doherty, I come back to you now as the proposer.
Sorry, Councillor. Point of order again, Chairman. I'm sorry to belabor the point. The words of the amendment, I'm just going to bring them up on my screen here. The words of the amendment say that the new scheme of allowance to be agreed by the council be implemented by the effective new date. So as there's no further amendment to the substantive motion to change anything in the allowances, by voting to accept these words, the former word says the new scheme of allowances to be agreed by the council. I still contend that actually means we're accepting the substantive when we vote for the amendment.
Right, Mr. Sheikh, you are the deputy monitoring officer, and legally clarified, please would you give us a definitive answer, and I will abide by the answer that you give now.
And I will as well, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps I'm not clear. We are amending the words by inserting the dates in paragraph 4.19x of this report, which forms part of 2.1 of the recommendation. And those dates, as I've highlighted earlier, are the amendments that we are making here. Is that clear?
Well, that is clear. So what I'm going to just clarify that after Councillor Doherty talks on the amendment, that we all know what it's about, we will have a vote. Then we can have a further, keep saying, hopefully fairly short debate and a further vote on the substantive motion. Is that, in a nutshell, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That is what I thought. Councillor Doherty, I shall, as the proposed, to have the last word on the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Chairman, sorry. And I must confess, I thought we were doing everything, which is why I presented all of my report along with the amendment. So I have presented everything I wanted to do. I just wanted to clear up a point, and I'm not sure if Councillor Dillon may come to it when he seconds it. I was accused of delay and cop-out of the timing of the amendment. The amendment had been discussed and agreed well in advance of this meeting. However, given that there are many councillors here, and given the fact that the Green Party seem to like to run straight to the press with anything that I present or they get hold of, I felt it was appropriate for us to have this conversation prior to it getting into the newspapers. So apologies for that, but I'm fully accept that I've got confused with regards to it. I didn't want to add anything else. I'm happy that Councillor Dillon seconds this and fills in what he would like to fill in.
Right, thank you. I'm going to ask now Mr. Sheikh to take us through the vote for the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe Councillor Culver has got her hand up, and I've had...
Yes, all right. Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Mr. Sheikh, and thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's just a point of order. I really resent the fact that the leader says that we run to the press with things. We respectfully approached the officers several days ago and we asked if it was possible to make an amendment, and we were told that that was not the case. We followed due process. So I take offence that in this case we've been accused of running to the press. It's not the case.
Okay, right, thank you. Councillor, sorry. Right, okay, your point is made, Councillor Culver. I'm still now, I think, going to go to the vote. Right, Mr. Sheikh, will you take us through the vote, please?
Yes, I have had a chat message from Councillor Marsh that he wishes to call for a named vote, but he hasn't put his hand up.
Right.
Can I just clarify that? There is no hand up. Councillor Marsh has put his hand up.
Oh, right, Councillor Marsh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sheikh. That's because rather than go through it twice, we'd prefer to have a named vote on the substantive motion, whether the amendment passes or not.
Okay.
So getting enough people who actually want to have it. So hopefully that will happen, and we can then have a named vote on such an important issue on the main motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, Mr. Sheikh, will you take us through the amendment vote, please?
Thank you very much. I'll start. Councillor Adrian Abbs.
For.
Councillor Steve Arda Walter.
For.
Peter Argyle.
Sorry, Chairman, point of order.
Councillor Dillon, you have a point of order?
Yeah, sorry, I thought Councillor Marsh said he wanted a named vote on the substantive motion, not on the amendment.
Which is, yes.
But this is the amendment, not the substantive motion, Chairman. That we're voting on.
Point of order, Chairman, we're doing a called vote.
Right, we are doing a called vote, which is the only way we can do the vote on the amendment, which is not recorded. When it comes to the substantive motion, if sufficient councillors call for it, then we can have a recorded vote.
Okay. Apologies, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Mr. Sheikh.
If I may, can I start again, please? Councillor Adrian Abbs.
For.
Steve Arterwolter,
For.
Peter Argyle,
For.
Phil Barnett,
For the amendment.
Jeff Beck,
For.
Dennis Pennyworth,
For.
Dominic Boyk,
For.
Graham Bridgman,
For.
Jeff Brooks,
For.
Jeff Kant,
For.
Hilary Cole,
For.
James Cole,
For.
Jeremy Cottam,
For.
Caroline Culver,
Against.
Lee Dillon,
For.
Lynn Doherty,
For.
Billy Drummond, Billy Drummond,
I think he's left.
He may have left. He may have left us.
He's left.
Councillor Clive Hooker,
For.
Gareth Hurley,
For.
Owen Jeffrey,
For.
Rick Jones,
For.
Nasser Castle,
For.
Alan Lowe,
For.
Tony Linden,
For.
Royce Longton,
For.
Ross McKinnon,
For.
Alan Macro,
For.
Tom Marino,
For.
David Marsh,
Against.
Steve Masters,
Against.
Andy Moore,
For.
Graham Pask,
For.
Eric Petterton,
For.
Claire Rolls,
For.
Garth Simpson,
For.
Richard Somner,
For.
Joe Stewart,
For.
Martha Vickers,
For.
Tony Vickers,
For.
Andy Williamson,
For.
Keith Woodhams,
For.
Howard Wollaston.
For.
Thank you very much. I confirm that the motion stands amended and will now become substantive motion with those amendments included.
Right, now, members, we will start again effectively, but I would respectfully ask that if you have made your comments that reflect the substantive motion as unamended, if you could abbreviate potentially what you might be preparing to say now, I'd be very grateful. So I'm going to go back to Councillor Doherty as the proposer. Is there anything you wish to add, Councillor Doherty?
I've covered the key points in my main points, and I'll come back because I have an opportunity at the end once I've heard everybody to come back again. So I'll leave it till then. Thank you, Chairman.
You do indeed, Councillor Doherty, and I promise I won't forget you. So Councillor Dillon, do you wish to reserve your rights?
Sorry, I was nodding away. Yes, please, Chairman. I'll reserve my
Okay.
right.
Members, who wishes? I've got 3 hands up now, I believe. Councillor Vickers, Councillor Abbs, Councillor Culver. In that order, Councillor Tony Vickers.
Chairman, thank you. Just to make a brief point, some of us go back to the time when members were paid an attendance allowance. I do feel that was a good system. It was removed. We had no choice over it. I think it was the Labour government that actually told us we had to have it, because I think it's in the interests of the sort of party that does the very strong whipping that they do, that everybody gets the same amount, irrespective of how much work they put into the job. And I'm afraid that has been reflected. Some councillors do far more than others, often for good reasons. They are unable to put the time in, perhaps, and so they concentrate on their ward work. And others work an awful lot, even though they may not be front bench spokespersons or get extra allowances. So I just want to put it down that and I hope several others, would like to see the return to a system which reflects the amount of work people put into these somewhat boring formal meetings. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Councillor Abbs, And I note, Councillor Brooks, that you wish to speak. You're obviously having trouble with your blue hand. I'll come to you in turn. Councillor Abs.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I must admit I debated this in my head long and hard before deciding to vote the way I did on the amendment. I think delaying it is absolutely the right thing to do. However, I do have a bit of an issue with the way the Greens are portraying this as we're all money grabbing. Just some simple maths will actually show that it's just not the case. I will speak on what I do as a councillor myself to just give people an indication. So between being member of WAP, EAG, exec meetings, council meetings, and remember, I'm only a shadow portfolio holder. I'm not even a main councillor. And then you go the governance licensing committees, prepping for work, council, just your local ward duties, etc., etc. Someone in my position is probably doing between 20 and 30 hours a week. That's on top of their normal job. Okay, I'm over 25, so surprising to some people. So I'm earning a minimum wage of £8.21. So actually, I'm earning less than minimum wage. Now, if I'm going to now encourage anybody who isn't independently wealthy and can afford to do it into this position, how can we? They can't even pay the babysitters. Yeah, nobody can come and do the job. If you want good people to do the job, we need to be able to reward them. I'm not asking for the money for myself. I'm quite happy to give the money back to charity. But that's not the point. It's not for me. It's to enable others to be able to do the job. So yeah, we just need to add, some people need to understand the level of work and effort that goes in that some of the councillors are doing. I can't speak for every councillor, but I can describe what I do myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Abs. Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say I really take exception. This evening we've been called liars. We've been told that we run to the press, and now it's being claimed that we have said that we are accusing other people of money grabbing. None of those three things are the case, Chairman. I just want to put on the record that I take exception to those things. And now I will move to make a few points based on this paper. The Green Group of councillors does not support the proposal to increase councillors' allowances. Earlier this autumn, the annual councillors' allowance was increased by 2.75% in line with the pay increase offered to staff. Councillors recently received a back payment to April 2020. We believe that this was reasonable because council staff were receiving the same. Tonight, an additional 3% increase in the annual councillors' allowance from April 2022 is being proposed, and yet the Chancellor of the Exchequer has announced that he will pause pay rises for public sector staff, with the exception of the NHS. We don't know how long this freeze will last. It could still be the case in April 2022. For this reason, we do not support a further increase in councillors' allowances. We recognise the dire financial straits that members of the public are facing because of COVID and its impact on the economy and employment. I have personally experienced the effect of this. I lost my job as a part-time teacher in July. It is challenging to live on less than £8,000 per year, but I recognise, and so do my colleagues, that it is more difficult for people living on universal credit, the self-employed whose income has disappeared overnight because of COVID, and people who were told earlier this year that they do not qualify for furlough. Moving on to other points, the paper before us proposes that the council promotes a Be a Councillor campaign to encourage greater diversity. With the greatest respect to members, this council is dominated by white men of a distinguished age, many of whom are retired or whose work allows them the flexibility to undertake the responsibilities of being a councillor. We have one of the least diverse council chambers in the country. We need more women, more young people, more ethnically diverse people, and people from a range of backgrounds and life experiences. People who know what it's like to struggle to find work, to bring up children on their own, to not be able to afford decent care for their elderly relatives, or to suffer disability and ill health. All of these experiences need to be represented in this council chamber if it is to be truly democratic. The relatively low level of council allowances compared with other means of income does put many people off standing for public office. The role shouldn't be restricted to people who can afford to do it. It should be rewarded in such a way that it does not exclude people on low incomes or people who lack savings or a pension to fall back on. The long evening meetings when most people are recovering from a hard day at work or getting their children ready for bed also put some people off. To perform the role of a councillor effectively takes much time and work, as other colleagues have mentioned this evening. Preparing for meetings, scrutinising proposals, undertaking casework, engaging with town and parish councils, and proactively campaigning on issues of local concern can easily take up to 20 or 30 hours per week in my experience, as Councillor Abbs pointed out. For the record, our group receives no leader's allowance, spokesperson allowances, or paid assistant, unlike the other groups. There are many dedicated local volunteers who would make excellent councillors, but they have no party political affiliation and find the tone of debate in council meetings uncomfortable to witness. The irony is, if they were allowed to witness the more friendly and collegiate atmosphere of an advisory group, which are currently confidential, their concerns might be allayed. We recently had an equality and diversity training session where many people agreed on the need to encourage more women to stand, and we had an extremely useful exchange of emails afterwards, myself, Councillor Stewart and Councillor Rolls, and we agreed on these issues. As well as promoting the Be a Councillor campaign to encourage people to stand for election, we need to have an honest conversation with people about what puts them off standing for office as well. But these are all longer term issues. Right now, we are potentially on the brink of mass unemployment because of the pandemic, and we have Brexit waiting for us in January. We are facing a public sector pay freeze, and we don't know how long this will last. I assume that all members are aware that the council is considering making 4 people redundant soon, during a pandemic when job vacancies are attracting hundreds of applications each.
Point of order, Chairman.
Councillor Doherty.
I believe that Councillor Culver is talking about confidential Part 2 reports that is not appropriate to discuss in public.
I do agree, actually, yes.
It's entirely inappropriate, and perhaps why amendments are kept back from Councillor Culver.
Amendments kept back?
Another point of order, Chairman.
Councillor McKinnon.
I believe Councillor Carver said that she did not receive an allowance as the leader of the minority group. I believe that's not correct, and that in fact she does. I wonder if she could.
No, I don't receive an allowance, Councillor McKinnon.
Right, look, Councillor Culver, can you just continue, please?
Thank you, Chairman.
Please be careful if there are Part 2 items that you're aware of not to disclose.
Well, I know that myself and Councillor Dillon have both received a briefing about it from the union. There is no guarantee that people will find work if they are made redundant at this point in time. Meanwhile, their colleagues face a pay freeze. These are the reasons why we do not support tonight's proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Members, I often have in the past said something along the lines of, and it's quite clear, we don't always agree on everything, but we do respect other people's points of view. So I've said it again, I won't say it any further. I actually have 6 people who have indicated they wish to speak, plus the seconder, plus the proposer. So I would urge that please, if you could try to make new points only, as opposed to reiterating points that have already been made, I'd be incredibly grateful for the good conduct of business. I'm not trying to foreshorten discussion or debate, far from it. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just keep this really brief. I know we've talked about diversity and getting more women into the council. As one of only 6 women on this council, and as I look at this Zoom screen, it is quite depressing to see very nice colleagues, but obviously very male dominated, and you have to sort of pick out the female ones amongst it. So I just wanted to say I totally support anything we can do more to get more women into public office and into the council roles. And I thank Councillor Culver and Councillor Stewart, and I know our leader is very supportive of this. I'd just like to see a bit more action around it because it is a wider issue, but obviously pay does help, particularly with the babysitter or whatever, whatever commitments you have as a household. It's going to encourage more women to stand, and it is just so important. We talk about it a lot. I just feel we need to start turning the dial and actually do some doing around this issue. Thanks very much.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor James Cole.
Thank you, Chairman, and I will keep this very short. I, for once in my life, wish to add to what Councillor Abbs was saying. When the independent remuneration panel came in, I was one of those interviewed. So I prepared for it by working out how much time I'd actually spent. It came to around 1,200 hours in the 12 months to when they came in. That's excluding any time that counted as political, group meetings, for example. The amount I was paid in the period to 31st of March this year is on the council's public website. You can work it back. On those hours, it comes to just a fraction over minimum wage. It can't make sense to do this in the long term. And look, I know we've moved on from where we were in the 70s when my father chaired what became this council. He got no allowance at all, or so he told me. Amateur days have moved on. I accept entirely the current approach this evening. I don't accept the parent Green Party approach, but we should not be paid for what we do, because that's what it comes down to. We're expected to be trained. And we are expected to do what is necessary to look after our wards. And for that, if pay must go up, it must go up, as and when the time permits. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Councillor Brooks.
Chairman, the points made by Councillor Abbs and Cole are what I was going to say in terms of an hourly rate is quite appalling, really, for the amount of effort, responsibility, commitment, sense of duty. How are we going to get people who have got the ability, the commitment to come and wish to be councillors? 26 years I have been doing this, and I tell you who loses out. The people who lose out are our families who lose us for 2, 3, 4 evenings a week and during the daytime, and times when I've actually given up paid work to come into the council. We must really stop, because I'm fed up with it, of the hair shirt that we pull on and the rending of garments about the fact that we actually get a bit of recompense for the work that we do dutifully, responsibly and considered. Can we please stop it? It is entirely appropriate to delay this implementation, but because it would be insensitive to take it at the moment. So I support it, but I really think we have to change our tune, and we have to say to people, come and be councillors because you will get a great deal of satisfaction. Ha ha ha, he said, because sometimes it isn't that satisfying, but a lot of the time it is. And yes, we will give you some, you will get some remuneration to make sure that you really aren't out of pocket and your family are recompensed for losing you for long, long hours. Please, let's change the mood music. Well said, Councillor Brooks.
Here, here.
Councillor Marino.
Thank you, Chairman. As I've already spoken, I'll keep this pretty quick. So first of all, I'm actually reliably informed that the new proposals would actually result in the Green Leader getting an allowance. But I just want to pick up on something that Councillor Culver has said. As I've already mentioned, and obviously cited my own case and example, if she wants more diversity, and particularly more young people, especially if they work full time like I do, there needs to be something commensurate in place to help us do the job properly. And yes, I agree, it would be nice to have a greater diversity in the council, and we've heard how much more needs to be done, but this diversity has to be organic. We have to have the best candidates available, which a commensurate allowance would actually attract. And finally, if Councillor Culver is so concerned about the number of white men of a distinguished age in the council, she might want to look inward at her own group. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Barnett.
Point of order, Chairman. We've got a third of our members are women. There's 1 out of 16 Liberal Democrats. You know, if Councillor Marino wants to have a go, maybe speak for Liberal Democrats. Thank you.
I don't think that's a point of order as such. I look to Mr. Shea.
Can I respond to that, Chairman?
Confirm. No, I don't think you can.
Okay, that's fine. I'll leave it there.
I know your point, and I'm keen to draw this to a conclusion. Councillor Masters, if you have, could you make new points?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep it fairly brief. There's been lots of talk about how we want to make more diversity in the chamber and everything else. And I echo my colleagues' concerns about the sensitivity and the public perception at these difficult times for COVID and the financial situation. It's almost as if we need something as an alternative to an allowance, such as the universal basic income. That would give people flexibility to work less hours in their full-time jobs and dedicate it to the council. And it would alleviate the need to have a basic allowance.
Okay, right. And
may I move the vote be?
You can have the very last word before I go to the seconder.
May I move that the motion be put, Chairman?
I'm going to. Councillor Bridgman, can you give me 30 seconds or less and I'll let you speak?
I hope it will be less than that, Chairman. I was simply going to point out that if there is a pay freeze for council workers, there will also be a pay freeze for councillors, because we are linked.
Okay. Councillor Dillon, a seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Potentially lots to summate within that debate, but I'll try and pick up some of the key points if I may. And I'm just going to go back to the start of the debate on the amendment, because that was where Councillor Marsh spoke and I didn't respond to those points. I was one of the councillors in the chamber in 2015. And the 16.5% increase was because all of the other allowances were scrapped, and the actual whole scheme costs less for the taxpayer. And part of the reason that it is so prominent in search results is probably credit partly to maybe some of the Green councillors for publicising that fact and playing on it as a political weapon, when in reality it was about saving taxpayers' money. And that brings us on to actually, why are we even discussing this tonight? And we're hearing about pay rises. There was pay rises that went through the council recently. And actually all of my front bench waived those pay rises this time round because we didn't think it was appropriate. However, we left it to individual councillors to make that decision because it had to work for them. I am not going to penalise my councillors financially just to try and score a cheap political point. What I want is my councillors to be able to feel that they've got the backing of the council and of the public to go and do their jobs well and to have the resources available to them. The Greens spoke about not having enough women, and the leader of the Greens criticised my party, and she's right to criticise my group. I don't have enough women councillors in this group. And that's one of the reasons why I'm supporting this recommendation tonight. It's one of the reasons why we supported the paternal leave policy when that came to council as well, because we want to be more diverse. We can be wrong, say we're wrong, and look for progress. And that's what we're trying to do tonight with this motion. The Greens said that they didn't put down an amendment. Unfortunately, they voted against the amendment, which would have postponed it. But then they've also now voted against the carers allowance, against the specialist care allowance coming into force if they don't back this motion when we come to the substantive vote. So actually all those things that they're talking about, that Caroline Culver was saying, Councillor Culver was saying in her remarks at the end about diversifying, is all hot air unless you back it up with action. And actually this is backing it up with action whilst having the ear of the public and realising when's the right time to ask for that to actually be implemented. The Be a Councillor programme is something that we need to do better as a council. We need to do it better as political parties. And we need to talk about the real benefits that you get of being a councillor. We ran a session as a political party, and Councillor Brooks was talking to some of our new recruits, shall we say, and actually the story he told was about the difference he made on an adoption panel. It wasn't about the allowance, but having the allowance there to back you up means that he got to go to that meeting. He made that difference for that particular child. And I know that resonated with our candidates when we were talking to them. We've done the maths within this debate. We've shown that actually as an hourly rate, it's around minimum wage. And remember, this carries a 45% public service discount. We understand that we are in this chamber because we want to make a difference to our communities, and that actually that allowance is almost cut in half to recognise that. And the reality that even if we voted for this tonight, we would still be one of the lowest paid councillors in the country. So as Councillor Brooks said in his remarks, it's about let's not beat ourselves over this. We are being proportional, and we are doing something that will maybe hurt us all, small p politically. Maybe we'll lose some votes at the ballots. Maybe the Greens will put a leaflet out saying that we're all greedy. But actually what we know is that we've set the groundwork and the foundations to allow future councillors to stand to make us a more diverse council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Doherty, anything more you wish to briefly add before I go to the vote?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would just like to say this isn't a political decision, and I stand with everything that Councillor Dillon has put before you this evening, and in this we're completely aligned. What is apparent within the chamber is everybody wants to see greater diversity. We just have difference of opinion how you achieve that. So I'm pleased with the result that everybody is looking at that diversity issue, and I hope that we can all work proactively together to achieve that. Before I put it to the recommendations, I'd just like to thank all of those people that are voting in favour of this tonight, because as elected members, we are here to take difficult decisions. We're not here to necessarily take always popular decisions. We can be sensitive to the needs of our residents, and that's why I've suggested the amendment that I have. But we have to take the right decisions. And for me, the right decisions are laid out in the recommendations before you, and I commend this report to you all.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to go to the vote. Councillor Marsh, you wish to ask me something?
Just to reiterate that we would like to ask for this to be a recorded vote.
A named vote.
We have sufficient.
Right. I need 4 altogether.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happily will add my name and my group support to a named vote. I'm not ashamed on how we're voting on this.
And I would concur, Chairman.
Right, well, let's do it then. Mr. Sheikh, will you take us through this named recorded vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I saw Councillor Marsh, Councillor Dillon, Councillor Doherty.
Oh,
I need
Councillor Sonder, I saw as well.
I need one more. Councillor Masters. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much. I'll ask members to vote on this substantive motion. The recommendation as set out in the agenda with the amendment previously agreed included. Start with Councillor Adrian Abbs.
For.
Steve R. De Walter.
For.
Peter Argyle.
For.
Phil Barnett.
For.
Jeff Beck.
For.
Dennis Pennyworth.
For.
Dominic Boyk.
For.
Graham Bridgman.
For.
Jeff Brooks.
For.
Jeff Kent.
For.
Hilary Cole.
For.
James Cole.
For.
Jeremy Cottam.
For.
Caroline Culver.
Against.
Lee Dillon.
For.
Lynn Doherty.
For.
Billy Drummond. I believe he's left. Yeah. Clive Hooker.
For.
Thank you. Gareth Hurley.
For.
Owen Jeffrey.
For.
Rick Jones.
For.
Nasser Castle.
For.
Alan Lowe.
For.
Tony Linden.
For.
Royce Longton.
For.
Ross McKinnon.
For.
Alan Macro.
For.
Tom Marino.
For.
David Marsh. David Marsh.
Against.
Thank you. Steve Masters.
Against.
Andy Moore.
For.
Graham Pask.
For.
Eric Pettenden.
For.
Claire Rolls.
For.
Garth Simpson.
For.
Richard Somner.
For.
Joe Stewart.
For.
Martha Vickers.
For.
Tony Vickers.
For.
And Andy Williamson.
For.
Keith Woodhams.
For.
Harvard Wollaston.
For.
Thank you. I confirm that the substantive motion as amended has been carried.
Thank you, Mr. Sheikh. we're on to the motions. Item 18. Motion 18A is the citizens' advice.
Chairman, point of order. There's item 17.
Thank you.
Am I rushing through?
Yes.
Oh. Well spotted, Councillor. I knew someone would keep me on the straight and narrow. Item 17, members. The council time. Now, this I'm sure will engender a lot of debate. The Berkshire Council timetable of public meetings 2021 to 2022. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope that this will be a relatively straightforward report. It's to recommend to you the timetable of meetings for our municipal year 21-22. We do this annually, and I put the report before you. There's nothing more I need to say on the actual report.
It's seconded by Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, and happy to not reserve my right, Chairman.
Oh, is there anything you want to say then? Does anyone want to say anything on this very important topic of how we're going to spend our evenings for the next year?
I will make a point of order, Chairman. I don't want to speak to the item, but can I suggest that this is an ideal thing for a physical hand vote?
If Mr. Sheikh will allow us, I'm very happy to accept that. Mr. Sheikh, will you allow us?
My apologies. I think I'll have to go through the name calling.
It was worth a try.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order, could we do a block vote if by party leader, and if any member wanted to abstain or vote differently from their leader, then they could.
How's that? It's going to take longer debating how we're going to vote than at this rate. Mr. Sheikh, can we do a block vote on party political lines?
I really wanted to see, but I think I'll be fine with that. Thank you.
Right, we'll do it. We'll go with that. Okay. Right. Do any members wish to comment on this? I'm going to go then to the vote. I'm going to do this by going around group leaders since we're breaking with tradition. Councillor Doherty, do you think all of us are going, unless we indicate, are going to vote for this?
Chairman, I will vote for this, in favour of this on behalf of the Conservative group.
Councillor Dillon?
Yeah, I'll vote in favour of this in behalf of the Lib Dems.
Councillor Culver?
Yes, I concur. Thank you, Chairman.
I think we're all happy with that, Mr.
Thank you very
Sheikh.
much. Thank you very much. The motion is carried.
That speeded up a little bit. Thank you. I wondered, I think item 18 motions now then. Sorry, I jumped the gun. Citizens' Advice West Berkshire, I believe Councillor Rolls is being removed, only temporarily. Councillor Martha Vickers, to move the motion, please, submitted in your name.
Thank you, Chair. Chairman and colleagues, this motion acknowledges the vital work Citizens Advice West Berkshire.
Can I just stop? Could I just stop you? Could you just move?
Oh, you need a seconder. Sorry.
I need a seconder.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Right. Well, in accordance with Procedure Rule 498, I will say that Council will not debate this motion on this evening, but as it's an executive function, it will be referred to the executive for consideration. But Councillor Vickers, you may now speak for up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman and colleagues, this motion acknowledges the vital work Citizens Advice West Berkshire are doing to support people in these desperate times, and asks that this council ensure that they have sufficient resources to continue this work. But its main purpose is to support the campaign to address long-term the serious financial hardship that many of their clients are facing. This pandemic has wreaked havoc on many lives, but it's generally accepted that those already struggling financially have suffered most, and that the impact on them will be felt long into the future. Citizens Advice has welcomed recent government intervention, which has given much needed support to those in need during the pandemic. But with the prospect of further job losses, it's clear that more long-term measures are needed to safeguard living standards and support the UK's economic recovery. So Citizens Advice and 50 other organisations are calling on the government to make permanent changes to the benefit system in order to help low-income households in the difficult months ahead. In their report, Life on Less Than Zero, Citizens Advice states that 40% of their clients have a negative budget. This is where a debt advisor assesses that an individual cannot meet their living costs. Negative budgets are also a problem for those in work. 50% of the self-employed have a negative budget. On the government to keep the lifeline of the £20 uplift to universal tax credits and to extend this to legacy benefits such as income support. Their report states that 70% of those in receipt of universal credit and working tax credit would have a negative budget if the £20 uplift was removed. The report also highlights fuel poverty, particularly among the disabled, who spend £54 more every year on their energy bills than the non-disabled. They call for increased support to pay these bills, as well as action to improve the energy efficiency of their homes. Universal credit is now accepted as an effective improvement to the previous benefit system, but it needs to be maintained at the higher level. I ask the Council to assist Citizens Advice in this important campaign by agreeing to
30 seconds remaining.
3 MPs to support the changes outlined in the motion, changes which would benefit many West Berkshire residents. I also request that they take this action now, as there are no budgetary implications for this Council in agreeing to do this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Vickers. You'd have probably longer to speak at the executive when it comes up there. Could I please ask that Councillor Rolls be brought back?
Mr. Chairman, I just did that now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rumans. And if I could then ask Councillor Jeff Brooks, motion B, SIL payments. Could you please
put my motion forward, Chairman?
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Vickers, perhaps? Tony
Seconded.
Vickers.
I'd like to second that motion, Chairman.
Thank you. And in accordance with Procedure Rule 498, I'm stating that the Council will not debate this motion on this evening, but it will be referred to the Executive. But Councillor Brooks, you do, of course, have your 3 minutes to state your case now.
Chairman, I put this motion before members as I'm very concerned about our community infrastructure levy, a SIL, as it is known for within these walls, our process in light of 2 cases brought to my attention where tens of thousands of pounds have been paid by applicants and where there may well have been a case that developments should have been 0 rated. I have multiple letters from these applicants telling me that they believe they completed the paperwork to the best of their ability, but got some things wrong. SIL is a complex process and mistakes will happen. We members need to know that everything reasonably was done to ensure that if these properties were 0 rated, then that is the charge we should have made. Yet the process adopted would appear to be almost a gotcha moment. Ah, you have filled the forms out incorrectly and now you must pay many thousands of pounds. And no, we can't review it as the legislation does not allow us to. And yet we on this side, Chairman, have established that a review is certainly allowable and it has been recommended in one of the disputes. In simple terms, Chairman, this smacks of sharp practice. And this comes down to what kind of council we are. Are we fair and helpful at all times to our residents and developers, or are we looking to maximise our income by almost any means we can? And it is disappointing that we will not debate this evening. It seems to suit the executive, of course, to have more and more delegated to their purview and less debated here. Even I get 3 minutes when the proposers of other motions debated on the night will get 5 minutes. It is totally wrong, and it is something that should be looked into by a Governance and Ethics Committee. However, let me be clear what I am proposing. That our process into charging SIL be independently reviewed so that we can absolutely be sure that process is fair, considered, and helpful to applicants. Now, the Leader and Chief Executive told me that this matter has been considered by our legal and audit functions. All is fine. But this is another example, Chairman, of this council marking its own homework. We did this with an internal review of the London Road industrial site, and we've done it here. We have a member of the administration chairing the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. How can the public be confident that nothing is wrong when we refuse to let an independent person or member of the opposition shine a lens on a particular matter? If, as they have told me, everything is fine, then they have nothing to be afraid of by an independent review. Or are they terrified that many other cases may be identified where we have taken advantage of incomplete submissions?
30 seconds, Councillor Brooks.
We will see what the executive recommend, but I give them fair warning, Chairman. If they simply tell me again that everything is fine and turn down this motion and a dispute is settled in the courts against this council on this matter, then I will call for the resignation of the leader and the executive. Be very sure you are right when you discuss your recommendations on this proposal.
Right,
Councillor
thank you.
Donnelly, Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. I'm afraid you're out of time, but I think your words have been heard. Members, motion 18C, the postponement of the demolition of the Faraday Road football ground facilities. Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right, would you please?
I move the motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Brooks, I believe you're seconding.
Yes, I am seconding. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Well, this is the last one I'm going to do this to, but under procedure 498, we're going to refer this one to the executive. Councillor Dillon, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can understand why this one's being deferred, although I think that the lack of debate, so that when the executive respond, they're only hearing from one councillor for 3 minutes, isn't enlightening to the democratic process. Also interesting to note that obviously there was quite a few public questions around this motion that we've heard answers from Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Wollaston. So I'm going to address some of those before I actually go into some of the pre-written comments. We were asked about one of the questions around evidence of need for the site, and Councillor McKinnon said that he couldn't provide that evidence right now in his supplementary answer. I would contest that if there was overwhelming evidence of need, that Councillor McKinnon, being a diligent councillor that he is, would have been able to put his finger on that and answer it in a heartbeat for the resident. So it really does concern me. I'll be interested in the response to this motion to see the evidence pulled out. We also heard a question from members of the public around consultation, and we heard from Councillor Wollaston that there had been no consultation, otherwise he would have confirmed so. What he confirmed was that the location was crucial and that we need to do that with the work. Now, at the end of October, Mr. Chairman, the Council's Planning Department validated an application from this council, and that planning application was to ask to demolish the former football clubhouse at Faraday Road, to create 123 car parking spaces and to turn the current pitch into public open space. Now, my motion is asking that the administration postpone proceeding with that application, at least until the equivalent or a better alternative site is confirmed and approved by the football community. It is not saying never, but it is saying, in line with our own policies and national policies, that we shouldn't be demolishing sporting venues, or in this case, an asset of community value, without a replacement being in place first. And we also believe that it makes sense that any replacement should, of course, be designed in consultation with its intended users, something that the council clearly isn't doing on the public open space that it's proposing to create. Now, we've had the ground closed for 2.5 years already, and in that time, the council have lost a lot of goodwill with the football community. And the planning application that went in talked about London Road being unlikely to commence for at least another 3 years. So that's talking about maybe 5.5 years without a football facility in the heart of the town. So it would seem sensible to us, Mr. Chairman, that the council now engage with those interested parties representing the town to find a solution that works best.
30 seconds, Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a real shortage of playing pitches and training pitches in Newbury, and an FA report stated West Berks is short by a full 8 full-size playing pitches based on local demand. And yet the administration are talking about spending nearly £200,000 on a public open space. A public open space next to Victoria Park, which is already a big public open space. What we need is proper footballing facilities for men, for women, for girls football. One that has modular buildings with toilets and changing rooms and that can comply with FA specifications. I look forward to receiving the response from the administration, Chairman.
You took the hint very well, Councillor Dillon. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, members, motion 18D. Are you unless I see lots of people frantically waving at me now, I'm going to crack on with the next motion, bearing in mind that it is 20 past 9. Are you happy to continue? I'm not seeing any frantic waves for a break? No, right, carrying on. Motion 18D, better preparing West Berkshire for future economic shocks. Councillor Masters, will you please move the motion?
I would like to move the motion, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Dillon, I believe you're...
Yes, yeah, seconding this one, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm going to surprise you all and say that I recommend that Council debate this motion in the evening in order to facilitate the discharge of business in accordance with Procedure Rule 458. So Councillor Masters will be allowed to speak for up to 5 minutes. Councillor Dillon, do you wish to reserve your rights?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Right, Councillor Masters, 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a maximum, not a target.
Thank you, Chairman. Fellow councillors, none of us need reminding that 2020 has been quite a tough year. Many across West Berkshire live with a constant strain on their mental health and well-being and face unprecedented challenges across every area of their lives. Our strong local economy here in West Berkshire has been seriously impacted by the pandemic, and the worst of the challenges may still be ahead of us. Local businesses and organisations across the district find themselves in a very uncertain place, unable to see any clear path to recovery or make plans for the weeks and months ahead. What has been brought drastically into focus is that if we are able to meet future shocks and protect our residents from the very worst effects, we need to be prepared. I thank the Leader of the Opposition for seconding this motion. It's clear that Councillor Dillon and his colleagues on West Berkshire Council are prepared to address the challenge before us. I hope our Conservative colleagues also embrace this proposal this evening and that we can arrive at a truly cross-party decision that is in the best interests of the residents here in West Berkshire. Remember, this motion is not committing the council to spending any money, merely examining options and to support our residents as we navigate these uncharted waters. We already have lots of universal services to help people. We have basic income for children in child support, state pension for those in retirement. We have a universal education system in our national curriculum and schools, and of course a universal healthcare system with the NHS, all provided by the state and free at the point of access, regardless of status and wealth. Like the NHS, universal basic income is a game changer for our time. Just as the NHS transformed the health of this country, universal basic income has the power to transform our relationship with work, voluntary work, and art and leisure, and indeed the lack of work. The time for a UBI is now upon us. This motion calls for a universal basic income trial to be undertaken, a monthly amount of money paid directly to the individual without any conditions attached. It's been tested in many places across the world, but we need to look here at how it could help people here in West Berkshire. To some extent, we've already been trialling some elements of the UBI in the furlough scheme, and the Chancellor has demonstrated the kind of scale we need to be thinking to help people furlough has protected in the incomes of many families across the district. But the self-employed on precarious zero and those on precarious 0 hours contracts have not been afforded that protection, and they very much need it. Many people in West Berkshire embody the entrepreneurial spirit. The self-employed have seen incomes plummet as the economy has shrunk. Most are not owners of large companies, but individual contract and freelance workers who have very little to fall back on. UBI would afford them a level below which they cannot fall. One argument against UBI is that it is a disincentive to work. There is little or no evidence to support this. Indeed, having furlough in place across the district has offered those benefiting from the scheme the ability to join the fantastic community effort that we have witnessed here in West Berkshire. Far from turning us all into lazy layabouts, furlough, and by extension, universal basic income, gives people choices. They can do voluntary work, they can become artists, writers, musicians. They can even retrain. These options add value to their communities and our community. They improve their well-being and the ability for everyone in this community to fulfill their potential. Current forecasts of emergency borrowing are unsustainable, and it therefore means that we actually cannot afford not to examine alternatives such as UBI. Imagine if there'd been a system in place when the pandemic struck, people could have been shielding and doing what was right to protect others without fear of their livelihood, losing their livelihoods in their low-paid contracted work. It would mean no one in West Berkshire would ever wake up wondering how they are going to be putting food on their table that day. A place where no one had the shame and the loss of dignity of having to rely on charity and the food bank and the mental stress of means-tested benefits. I therefore urge members of this council of all persuasions to come together, support this motion and examine the possibilities surrounding universal basic income and start the conversation right here in West Berkshire. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Councillor Masters. I already have 7 people with their hands up. It's nearly 9:30. You can do the maths. Councillor Culver.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, Chairman, can I welcome the fact that we're able to debate this motion this evening and it is not being sent to a confidential advisory group for consideration. The public deserve to hear our deliberations, and the numbers watching tonight, 53 at the moment, suggest that people are interested in what we are discussing this evening. I will outline here some of the reasons to support a universal basic income and endeavour to debunk some of the myths. A UBI would be universal and unconditional. Means-tested benefits are complicated and bureaucratic. Millions miss out on money they are eligible for. UBI provides an income floor that nobody can fall through. Far from paying people to do nothing, a universal basic income would support those already working hard. For example, stay-at-home parents, sons and daughters caring for the elderly and infirm, and partners of people with disabilities or undergoing cancer treatment. We should bear in mind that when employees turn up to work each day to produce goods or to provide services, it is not by virtue of a miracle. It is thanks in significant part to the unpaid labour of parents, carers and spouses. A UBI would recognise this caring work, which underpins the economy and create a safety net for all. The traditional argument that people should only receive the means to survive by their presence in an office, factory or field is a nonsense. We have a welfare state, a national health service, a state pension and child benefits, things which give people a level of financial security without means testing. The government's furlough programme has shown that when it comes to the crunch, the state will step in to prevent mass unemployment and destitution. We already know that we cannot rely on the market and the Philip Greens of this world to keep people fed and housed. A universal basic income would have ensured the thousands losing their jobs during this pandemic had a safety net rather than desperately chasing a dwindling number of jobs or waiting weeks for universal credit. For example, 3 million self-employed people in the entertainment industry received no furlough this year, the 6th largest sector in the UK, worth 100 billion per annum. People are being driven away from the industry into low-paid, unskilled work. Will they ever return to the self-employment that utilised their skills and contributed so much to this economy? Today's Daily Mail featured a story about a woman who lost her job as a freelance live events producer and is trying to survive on £54 per month in benefits. She has turned to a food bank, according to the newspaper, to feed her children. This example shows how fragile our economy is when a crisis hits. The council's strategy priorities include support everyone to reach their full potential and support businesses to start, develop and thrive. UBI could enable the residents of West Berkshire to fulfil their full potential by having the time to train, retrain and potentially start new businesses. A universal basic income is affordable. Reports by economists and think tanks show how a UBI could be funded fairly and sensibly. Options include progressive taxation, closing tax loopholes that disproportionately benefit the wealthiest in this country, a tax on pollution and/or carbon, or a sovereign wealth fund. We believe the time has come to take UBI seriously. Let's show leadership by exploring the idea further with the local community, in partnership with them and seek funding for a trial. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Tony Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome this debate tremendously. I just wish that we got in as the Lib Dems to propose it before the Greens, but there we are. This idea of universal basic income only became Lib Dem party policy this year at our online autumn conference. And I think that was largely because the online nature of the conference meant that a lot more younger people who are too busy working or bringing up their families, and a lot fewer of us oldies, were actually there to vote. And the party hierarchy actually was not in favour of the motion, but the way we work, it's the members that make our policy, and the members turned up from across the working age population and overwhelmingly supported the motion. And I think that tells us a lot. When I was growing up, my father couldn't understand it when after 3 years I changed jobs, because his generation had gone into a job straight from school and, generally speaking, stayed in it until they retired and got their golden handshake and their gold watch. My generation has seen a big change starting to happen in the workforce. And I look at the situation our children and grandchildren are going to be in, and it's not going to be like that. There is no secure job. You have to keep changing and retraining. And I want this policy to be implemented because I want to take the stress out of those periods of change, the stress that causes family breakup, mental illness, huge problems in society. To me, our economy exists to support and serve society and not the other way around. What we've seen in the last 2 centuries is gradually have society being brought to serve the economy. And I think it is extremely destructive and totally unsustainable, especially when jobs are being automated. I was against a local pilot, and that was the only reservation I had about this motion. But then I started doing some research online, and I found an article in The Guardian. No, it wasn't in a right-wing Tory sporting paper, but there are Conservatives in Scotland amongst those who are supporting the 4 local pilots that are approved there and supported by the First Minister in Scotland personally. And what struck me is what was said by the leader of the Conservative group on Fife Council, Councillor Dave Dempsey, who has joined forces with the members of the council in other parties, including our own. And he said, I come from a maths and engineering background, and there is an elegance to this. Now, with that elegance goes simplicity. One area of work which I think we could do without, if only the world was organised in a better way, is the thousands and thousands upon people who run our benefit system. So, members, I don't look upon those who are in the working age population, in the workforce, but out of work as scroungers, like one hears so often in the right-wing press. I look at them as members of families that are struggling and deserve support. They deserve to know that they can afford to pay their rent, that they can afford to feed their families, they can afford to keep themselves reasonably healthy to remain in the workforce and not be victims of a mental health crisis like so many are. So I call upon all of you in this council, including Conservatives, to see this as an elegant, simple, and ultimately socially sustaining policy, which we should look at carefully. And if this council were to be one of the pilots in England, I would welcome it. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, members, it is gone 25 to 10. We normally finish our meetings at 10, not a minute later, unless you vote in favour of a motion to continue beyond 10 to 10:30 maximum. I'm just floating it out there. I'm not going to ask for that to be proposed yet. I shall do it in about 10 minutes. I've got 6 members wishing to speak, and if we're all going to take 5 minutes, well, that's gone well after 10. So just making the point, Councillor McKinnon next.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And did you notice how no one's mentioned cost yet? Do you know, it's funny, when I made my first speech to Council, I think it was my first speech back in September last year, I had a wee bit of fun with the Green Party. I'd been on their website earlier that day and I quoted some of their policies I'd found back at them. Not all of them, just the more bizarre ones, so almost all of them. Now, abolishing international currencies, that was in there, that was a beauty. Legalising drugs was in there too, and neither of them were as bonkers as this one, UBI. Now, I think it was Councillor Marsh who stood up after I'd finished and said, I'm not going to respond to those slurs. I remember sitting there thinking, well, you can't really, can you? Because they're literally your policies off your website. Well, vindication, the slurs become the flagship policy. It's the greatest comeback since Lazarus. Right, UBI, giving everyone in the country enough cash to live on, whether they need it or not. The wealthiest gets this, it's the same as the poorest. It sounds too good to be true, and of course it is. It's political snake oil. We're told it'll improve the nation's mental health. People wouldn't have to worry about making ends meet. They could be artists, as we've heard before. They can learn new skills, pursue any interest they wanted. Of course, for those strange people who actually want a job and a career, well, no one's stopping them. Good luck. In fact, with all this state-funded free time, you could start your own business, make loads of money and pay back your UBI through your taxes. Spoiler alert, folks, there's 100% marginal tax rates in there if that's what they're peddling. All courtesy of an all-powerful and benevolent government. Now, if all of that sounds like some sort of socialist utopian dream, then you're on the right track. No shocker, Extinction Rebellion pals are loving it, but I was amazed to see the Lib Dems adopt this at their conference in October. I'd assumed, Councillor Vickers, it was like those old Labour conference motions in the 80s, you know, where the members would vote to join the Soviet Union and then the leaders would sort of awkwardly ignore it and look the other way. But I'm amazed to see them seconding it tonight, knowing how sensible a lot of them are. Now, it's amazing. The only costs that are mentioned in the motion are the massive savings in administration costs from streamlining the benefit system. I mean, talk about dishonesty. Not even going to try and quantify it. Now, the motion says that UBI would replace means-tested benefits. That's the exact wording of the motion. Get rid of those, have UBI instead. Now, presumably, the Greens and the Lib Dems are not in the business of cutting payments to those on low incomes. So here's some figures that we need to take into account. Let's take 2 households on benefits right now. You've got an unemployed single parent with 2 children, no other income, no disabilities. Quite possibly, depending on housing costs, that household would get the benefit cap, £20,500 per annum. Now, you take a single unemployed person, again, this is dependent on housing costs, but it's a conservative estimate, you'll be looking at about 11,500 in total in benefits. That's tax-free. Now, presumably, we're saying get rid of those and UBI will replace that. And we're not talking about cutting them. Now, here's why they don't talk about costs. If we're going to scrap means-tested benefits and we're going to replace that income for those hypothetical households, extrapolated across the country, this is going to cost you £660 billion per annum. Now, I'm going to be listening with great interest to what further supporters of this motion have to say. Maybe they'll mention costs, but if they for 1 second try to argue it's going to cost less than that, then they're saying they would cut payments to the poorest in society. End of story. Now, I don't think they will say that, but I'm going to be watching very closely. By the way, those means-tested benefits that are going to be replaced by UBI, they cost £52 billion annually right now. So this is going to cost an extra 608. That's 12 times as much. Some replacement. I mean, the Greens numbers don't just not add up. The numbers haven't been introduced to each other. That extra 608 billion, 78% increase in total government spending. Do not adjust your set, folks. You heard that right. It's utter insanity. The tax rises required to even come close to attempting to raise that sum would kill the economy stone dead. People who did work would have their taxes doubled effectively. Do you want a basic tax rate of 40%? Higher rate of 80%, additional rate of 90%, VAT at 40%? Do me a favour. The Conservatives believe in giving people who really need it a helping hand through the benefit system, not squandering taxpayers' hard-earned cash on these harebrained schemes to give rich celebrities a bung to spend at majestic wines. And yes, during the COVID crisis, the Conservative government did react really swiftly to set up the unprecedented support mechanisms, the furlough scheme, the self-employed support scheme, business grants, bounce back loans, universal credit uplifts. I've just answered a question earlier, £91 million West Berkshire's had to distribute to the residents. It really has been extraordinary, and I'm so proud to see a Conservative government supporting the public so powerfully. I really am. But these are emergency measures for drastic times. They want to make it permanent. Most people would be horrified at the thought of the government permanently paying people's salaries while they stayed at home, making
30 seconds, Councillor McKinnon.
Every adult and child in the country a dependent client of the state. Now, to the extreme left in their green costumes, it's part of a glorious socialist future. For everyone else remotely sensible, no, you're all right, thanks. Thanks, Jim.
Right, I have even more people wishing to speak now. Mr. Sheikh, will you talk us through how we extend, please?
Yes, a simple show of hands would be fine. Chairman, if you would propose and if seconded.
I'll put the motion, Chairman.
Okay.
I'll second, Chairman.
So you want the motion to be put? rather than
Yes.
extend. Is that what you're saying? Is the point of order, Councillor Law?
No, I will propose that we extend the meeting.
Oh, we extend. I beg your pardon, Councillor Bridgman. You're seconding that.
I am indeed. That's what I understood the motion to be.
I
Chairman.
do apologise. I misheard you and misunderstood. My apologies. A show of hands. Those who wish to extend beyond 10. Well, that looks like virtually everybody. May I say, I have had a little request that we just adjourn for 2 minutes only. By my watch, I make it about, well, it says 21:40 on my computer.
Chairman, there were a bunch of people who didn't vote for it. I'm not paid enough to stay on a lot after 10 o'clock. Social hours, Chairman.
It is, we need overtime for after 10.
Quite.
Time and a half.
I think I saw on my screen a majority of people.
I saw enough hands, Chairman, I can confirm that.
Mr. Sheikh, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Brooks, your overtime bid is not allowed. I'm going to say 2 minutes only for you to do what you need to do. I will be back here at, well, by my 1:45, okay? I make it 43 now, 2 minutes only. Right, members, I looking around quickly, thank you for being very quick with that. We now have an absolute maximum of going through till 10:30. So continuing in the order in which I have, Councillor Law.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Chairman, members, I'm very happy the Green Party has put this motion. In fact, I hope they will lead with it in their manifesto for the next election, because that will give them a great opportunity to show the sensible voters of Ridgeway, Wash Common and Speen their true colours. True colours beyond the single item fashionable Save Our Planet green colour that they promote. As our ex-MP once put it, the Greens are like a watermelon. They're green on the outside, but bright red inside. And this motion really demonstrates that. Chairman, this motion displays total economic ignorance. It's the sort of topic normally debated at students' unions. In fact, at students' unions often after several beers. Or perhaps what's living up a tree and you have nothing else to do. I myself well remember debating this, very similar to it back in the 60s, whilst I was studying for my...
Chairman, may I make a point of order? I'm finding Councillor Law's comments very distasteful, and I'm not even a member of the Green Party. Could he please not show some respect for the councillors?
I can hardly hear you,
I couldn't hear
Councillor
you.
Abbs, but I believe you're commenting on what Councillor Law is saying. I would ask all members that although we are saying things,
Yeah, so Chairman, point of order. The comments being made by Councillor Law are kind of personal, and they're actually pretty upsetting. They show no respect for other councillors, and I encourage him to withdraw it and just make a point about what's being put forward as opposed to against people.
Okay.
Chairman, may I respond?
You may respond, Councillor.
Yes, I'm criticising a party and its politics. I haven't mentioned any individuals.
Yes, I accept that. I do hope that we can conduct our business with good humour. That's always been a trademark of West Berkshire. I agree that we really must debate what is in front of us. And yes, I think it is legitimate in that there are politics involved, that we do come out with commenting about party politics. And you were not, Councillor Law, making personal statements, which I trust that no one here will do against other fellow council members. So Councillor Law, will you continue? And I will take that. And if I could say to Mrs. Fraser, could you take that however many seconds off the time, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I won't need my 5 minutes anyway. I have made a few ironic comments, and I think irony, there's a distinct difference between irony and disrespect, if I may say so. Chairman, I was going to say, I think this motion displays total economic ignorance. And it's the sort of thing that was debated at Students' Union. I myself debated this back in the 60s while studying for my economics degree. Actually, back then, we called UBI, I hope this is humorous, Councillor Abbs, utter the B word, insanity. That's what it stood for. Chairman, it's not a policy for the real world, as my colleague, Councillor McKinnon, has so elegantly destroyed. Not even Cuba or the Soviet Union ever went as far as this. And I don't think West Berkshire is about to be the first. I'm really also surprised, well, I'm not surprised actually, the mad wing of the Liberal Democrat Party managed to get this through conference. I note against the more sensible counselling of some of their leaders. So I guess our opposition Liberal Democrat leader feels obliged, because he's got ambitions within the party, he feels obliged to support this. It's interesting, I note, however, that from the list of people wishing to speak, he's never short of a word, but we haven't seen Mr. Brooks wanting to speak in this. I think I know Mr. Brooks's economic philosophies, and I would find it incredulous if he was to actually support this motion. And that's the only probably personal thing, and it's a nice personal thing, actually, I'm saying tonight, not criticizing. So, Chairman, I don't think West Berkshire is about to be the first. And indeed, if our Lib Dem friends continue to support this, that's great as well. because that will leave the Conservatives as the only electable party in West Berkshire for the next election. Thank you.
Councillor Brooks, I did see you indicating. Can I take you in rotation? I don't know what's up with your blue hand today. We have Councillor Pattenden.
Thanks very much, Chairman. From the debates I've been involved with and the strategy documents I've read from this administration over the last 18 months, the problems and impacts of inequality in West Berkshire are acknowledged by all. And what's also true to say is that even here, the problems caused by inequality are not going away. Those impacts are getting worse, and that's even without the COVID crisis. Inequality divides us and stops people from creating a better future. It helps us all, it makes us all less happy with our lives, even if we are personally relatively better off. Inequality destroys our future. Too many people are in low-paid, insecure jobs which restrict their choices. The pressure of low wages, high living costs, and a lack of freedom shuts people out of society and limits their opportunity to get ahead. Many others are freelancers or in 0 hours contracts are also in the same position. In this time of crisis, we've seen that social security makes us stronger as a nation, but our welfare system is broken. It's rooted in the idea that we can rely on the economy to generate enough jobs. We ask employees to demonstrate their strengths and claimants to demonstrate their shortcomings. Unemployment means poverty. The welfare system should foster people's sense of security and pride, but it does the exact opposite. Universal basic income is defined as a payment given to every single citizen, regardless of wealth and means, which is at regular, direct, and at a sufficient level to ensure their basic needs are met. The recently published 2-year Finnish pilot of UBI found that people were happier, had greater trust in others and in government, and more hope for the future with greater certainty the basic income provided. Nothing could be more uncertain than what will happen as we emerge from the coronavirus crisis. People have lost their jobs or are uncertain if they'll have jobs to go back to. There has been an exponential increase in food bank usage. A huge number of people are applying for universal credit, many for the first time, and are left waiting 5 weeks for their first payment, pushing them nearer and nearer the brink. This comes on top of the likelihood of a deep recession with all the ensuing impact on our well-being and our hope for the future. UBI is not a silver bullet. We would, for example, need a separate, properly funded system to ensure that everybody has a safe and secure home. What UBI does is turn on its head our idea of the value each of us hold. It starts us on a clear path to a more equal society. It's a tipping point at which we can reshape our society and our economy for the better. There are arguments against a basic income, of course, some of which have been exaggerated this evening. The first is that it would not be fair if everyone receives it, from the millionaire to the person claiming benefits. And yet the state pension, the winter fuel allowance, and the television license fee give pensioners, no matter their level of income, the opportunity to lead a dignified life. The second is that it would make people lazy, that they won't seek work if they receive free money. But remember, there are many complex reasons why people cannot work or choose not to. Parenthood, caring, education, for example. There need not be a connection between non-employment and destitution. And yet this is the reality for millions. Work need not be the only way in which we measure our value as individuals. The third argument is that it is not affordable. It is the case that giving everyone a basic income will be more costly than our current social security system, even if the significant administration costs of the current complex system are reduced. We will still need to make additional payments to those who are most exposed and at risk of falling behind, so that people with particular needs are able to live safe and dignified lives. But the COVID crisis has shown us that where there's a will, there's a way. In a matter of weeks, the government created a furlough system covering 80% of the salaries of 7.5 million workers. This has come at a huge financial cost, but we accept that without this, thousands of people would have been plunged into poverty as they lost their jobs. Now we must shift the dial so that it is unacceptable for people to be left destitute in one of the world's richest economies.
30 seconds.
Recently, West Berkshire Council was the first council to launch a local COVID-19 dashboard and was the first to launch a climate change bond. So why couldn't we join the first group of councils calling for a UBI trial, and eventually maybe even be one of the first councils to do something innovative yet serious to address inequality once and for all? Therefore, I urge all members to support this motion.
Councillor Marino.
Thank you, Chairman. Given how well Councillor McKinnon has spoken in respect to this topic already, I'll keep my comments relatively brief. As we've already heard, a full rollout of UBI would not be feasible nationwide, particularly given the state of the economy as we recover from the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. A report from Compass and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation found that universal basic income has the potential to negatively impact our vulnerable families, could dramatically increase the number of children in poverty, and fundamentally most likely increase inequality rather than decrease it, as it doesn't take individual needs and circumstances into account. Whilst I do concede that there are various models of UBI, the more adjustments made in order to account for costs and undesirable effects, it appears that we're close to something which resembles universal credit, which we already have. And the universal credit system seeks to incentivize people to move away from benefits and state dependence and provide support which is individually tailored to them to help them get into work and increase their earnings, which I'm sure many would agree is a much more preferable way of reducing poverty in comparison to a system of free money which disincentivizes work and which will hurt rather than help the most vulnerable. I also don't see why those who aren't in need should receive the exact same as those who are, and I'm sure the members opposite will be disgusted to hear of the state paying individuals such as the aforementioned Philip Green thousands of pounds a year for nothing. In short, nationwide system of UBI is simply money for nothing, which will put us in dire straits, and that's why I won't be supporting this motion tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks, I'm going to insert you now. This, your hand isn't up.
I was called out by Councillor Law, who thought immediately I would support him and Councillor McKinnon, and of course I do at this moment in time. But we are looking to the future, Alan, and I'm worried about the future, frankly, for people. I'm worried when AI ends up with driverless cars. How many millions of people who earn their living driving across the world could then be redundant? And are there going to be jobs for them? And what other jobs will AI displace? I think, Alan, and I talk to you through the chair, we will be in our dotage when these things arrive, if we're not now, I guess. But we do need to start looking at this. I don't know if it's affordable, but I'm prepared to support having a look-see and not just simply ruling it out, because it could be many, many millions of people in this country and across the world who actually cannot make a living when robots, artificial intelligence, greater computing power can actually displace their jobs. So I don't see it in the short term, but I don't rule it out in the medium term. Hope that helps.
Right, thank you. Councillor Abbs.
Yes, thanks, Jeff. That's just about everything I wrote down. My whole career since being a physics graduate has been at leading edge of technology and IT companies and now running my own, etc. So everything Jeff is saying that might come true is coming true. And the assumption that there will be jobs for all of any kind in the future is the wrong premise to base a future on, because it's not going to happen. You might think, and we can keep retraining and retraining and retraining, but unfortunately, manufacturing gone to China. I see no effort to bring it back. I see AI going to everybody, and I see less and less people being able to earn enough money to pay for everything in the country. So therefore, we're going to have to come up with something else. And it's just burying your head in the sand to go, we can't afford this today. Well, nobody's actually asking for this today, as Jeff has just pointed out. This is to examine what's going to happen. It's not going to implement it. And go on about the Lib Dem policy. Yes, they approved it so the executive could look at it in detail, again, to examine. So if you don't start looking at stuff and you don't start looking early enough, you do what the Conservatives seem to be doing, leaving everything too late, like their environmental strategy, leaving the implementation of that way too late. So yeah, I'm afraid UBI is needed to be examined, because there will not be the jobs in 30 or 40 years' time. I won't be around then, but it could take that long to implement something like this. So we better start looking. Thank you.
Councillor Arda Walter.
Thank you, Joan. And again, I'm intrigued by the technological future which Councillor Brooks has led us toward. And I do acknowledge that within the timescale I think he was alluding to, maybe 10, 15, 20 years, AI could have destroyed jobs, and yes, a different model may be needed. At that time frame, I certainly would be very interested in thinking about this. However, the current proposal is actually to spend real money today on everybody to alleviate the poverty and discomfort of a few. Looking around the world, there have been at least 25 trials of universal basic income across all continents, across rich and poor countries, and they have all been either funded on a trial basis by a state or for a segment of society, or financed by rich millionaires. One side example, which I suspect the Green Party and maybe the Liberal Democrats may not want to emulate, is the US state of Alaska, which gives away part of its oil revenue to all its residents. Putting that aside, though, none of these 25 trials have achieved their stated aims of encouraging people out of work, of giving that extra support which is needed. I do acknowledge that many of them have achieved secondary aims, such as a reduction in stress among recipients. The one partial exception is a third world trial in Kenya, which is ongoing still, and is a very long-term trial among a few people. That is interesting to look at, but really I don't see any evidence, given so many trials in comparable countries to ours, notably Finland and the Netherlands in Europe, which gives any suggestion that this would be money well spent at any time, let alone now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Chairman, thank you. I will definitely try to be brief. This is no different in principle from a free NHS, free education to 18 years of age, free libraries, free use of public highways. In principle, it is no different from that. The proposal is to do a proper investigation. It is to look at and investigate the principle and examine priorities in detail. That is what is being asked for. Chairman, let's go with it.
Right, thank you. Councillor Hurley.
Thank you, Chairman. I note the motion is designed to prepare the nation and local authorities from future shocks. It's very pleasing that we've got a vaccine coming for this pandemic, but I must admit, like a lot of other people, this will be the next biggest shock that we'll experience, because frankly, we'll be economically bankrupt in no time at all and put ourselves in a position where if anything else does happen, we'll be on our knees begging and pleading for relief from other nations. It comes across as let's spend for today and, manana, worry everything else tomorrow. I know this was brought by the Green Party. I thought they'd be keen to look after generations for the future. Well, those generations of the future will be absolutely bankrupt on their knees, and they're the ones that will suffer as a result of it. Quite clearly, there is no magic money tree, no matter how hard you search and look. So these things cannot be paid for at the scale that Councillor McKinnon described. And I note that in theory, it's great we give everyone all this money, but don't worry where it comes from, how we pay for it. That'll be someone else's problem. That's an undefined, unsubstantiated thing that we'll worry about another day. I'm sure it'll come true. And yes, in 30 years' time, we could lose jobs through AI. Equally, we could gain loads of jobs through AI and other endeavours. I note the motion says that this will address the unemployment that's growing. So let's pay everyone to not work. So where does the money come from to pay the people who aren't working? It's a downward spiral. It doesn't work. In fact, for, is it 18 months since we've been in this council, you know, this is a real low for me, an absolute low that we've sat here for this long, debated a matter that frankly is outside of West Berkshire Council's hands. We can have an opinion on it. We can have a view, but this is a state matter. You know, write to Rishi Sunak, put it on your election campaign leaflets for 2023 and look at the results. We all know what that's going to be. I'm flabbergasted by this. I'm disappointed by this. There's pressing matters in West Berkshire, in the nation. We could be doing more for our residents at the moment. We could be getting questions from the opposition and the Green Party challenging us on specific points on what we're doing to benefit the residents of today. What we're doing to do better in terms of responses to the pandemic. But all we get is this sort of fantasy world ideology of the panacea that they'd love to have in years to come that is never going to be real. So it's a spurious motion. I think the timing is incredibly poor. And if you really want to hear these views and these where you want to go, then you don't need to be sitting in this chamber. You need to try and get to Westminster. But clearly, we all know that's never going to happen. Hence, you bring it here. So in conclusion, Chairman, I will emphatically be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you. The last person I have, and then I am drawing a line, apart from obviously the seconder and the mover of the motion, Councillor Cottam, if you could be as brief as you can, because we've only got 20 minutes total.
I will be very brief, Chairman, because as usual, Councillor Brooks has stolen my thunder. Full automation of manual jobs is coming very, very soon. We have, for example, autonomous cars coming, taxi drivers, bus drivers, you name it, lorry drivers will no longer be required. We have to start having some radical approaches to what this is. I think this is just one of them. It's a trial. It's look at it and see. We have to make comparisons, and if we don't do something now, we may end up not having anything at all, and that would end up in mass unemployment, which would be tragic. So with some circumspect about how to finance it, we have to look at that. You're quite right. But we doesn't mean that we don't look at future alternatives to what the model that we have now. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Councillor Dillon, as seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lots of debate and most of it good-mannered. I'm disappointed, I think, Councillor Hurley's comments in that no real content to it, but a rant about looking forward and looking for the better. I think quite a lot of this debate was looking at the final solution, and that's not what the motion was asking. When I first saw this motion, I was had some concerns about it. Whether it's right to do a local pilot, as Councillor Vickers said, and as Councillor Hurley pointed out, actually, in terms of it being a national state matter. But the state is not picking it up. And when they're not, other councils should do. We wouldn't be the first councillor law. And there are Conservative councillors across the country who have backed this. So we'll see their election literature as well. If you come at the premise of society that no one should be left with insufficient income to feed, clothe and house themselves, then you have to think about how you come up with a solution to that. And UBI and Councillor McKinnon talks numbers, he talks big numbers with an air of confidence. But I can read reports and I can read numbers that are completely contradictory to that look at the various models of UBI. Now, I'm not going into those tonight because that's not what this motion and debate is about. This motion and debate is about should council go and explore that. Councillor Marino talks about it looking more like UC. The more you start tailoring it, and actually the Lib Dem motion at conference was a UBI, a flat rate with targeted intervention afterwards. And I appreciate, Councillor Marino, that becomes a more complex system again. But UC isn't working, and I see UC not working for residents day in, day out. From Thatcham North East to Calcott to Lambourne to Greenham, we have severe areas of deprivation and poverty in West Berkshire, and something needs to be done about that. I've been involved in projects over the years to try to address that. but we haven't stuck at it long enough, and so we haven't seen the success. One of my main concerns about a UBI pilot here in West Berkshire is how long would we have to do it to be able to get the real evidence from it. If you look at the ones Councillor Ardal Waters was talking about, the 25 across the world, I think part of the problem with those, Councillor Ardal Waters, is that they're not long enough, actually. And if you're on about real systematic social change, it needs to be long. But I'm happy to go to the next stage that this motion is asking for and have that debate and explore what that looks like. And that is all this motion is doing. And unfortunately, by coming at it from a shut, closed-eyed principle view that the current welfare state works, that somehow paying people, I think Councillor Marino said free money. Well, it's not free money, Councillor Marino, it's our money. And it's about how we as a society want to redistribute our money and our collective wealth as a nation. Maybe the Conservatives would be more in favour of it if it was called what the Alaskans call theirs, which is a permanent fund dividend. If we're all shareholders in society and we receive a contribution from our collective company, that might sit better with them. But actually, in essence, this is about exploring and looking further. And as Councillor Masters said in his excellent points addressing it at the beginning, to examine the options, not about spending money. Mr. Chairman, I won't use all of my time up. I think there has been some big sweeping statements made tonight. I think there's been some nuance in the debate. I think that Councillor Eric Patterson spoke passionately about why we need to go and look at this because of inequality and because it exists. And I think it's duty bound on us to go and explore options and test them and see if they can work. And again, that's all this motion's asking for. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Councillor Masters, the final word, then we go to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council. I thank everybody for their contributions. I have to say, I was refreshed by the progressive nature of the Lib Dem contributions, particularly Eric in his impassioned rebuttal of poverty and the condemnation of the impacts that has on people's lives. I think that's why we're here, and that's why, as a community, we need, as it says in the motion, to examine the options. To dismiss it out of hand with hyperbole and overinflated misrepresentation of figures from members of the Conservative group is dishonest and disingenuous. And what have they got to fear? Let's have a public forum. Let's have a cross-party group. Let's discuss those facts and hammer it out. Let's see the evidence. There's equal numbers of evidence, as Councillor Dillon said, that rebut those highly inflated figures. Indeed, the studies by Compass and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, they have been misquoted so many times that the authors have had to come out and rebut the facts and set the record straight. It is not cut and dried. And as I stated in my opening argument, this is not about committing West Berkshire and the West Berkshire Council to any funds. It's about exploring the options and having an open and honest discussion about what may be needed to be doing, as Jeff Brooks said, Councillor Brooks, my apologies, Jeff, over the next medium term. It's about preparing. And there's one thing we've seen from our Conservative government is that they are fast on buzzwords, but very little on preparation. And as an ex-military man, we have a saying of many P's, which I won't repeat here, but it's very poor performance from the government, and the Conservatives here are letting themselves down by not being open to that debate. Let them come to a forum and discuss it honestly and openly. I urge the council and all the members to vote with their conscience. I know there are people out there on all benches who are sympathetic to the idea, and as was said by one of the members, that there are many Conservatives across the country that support this. Indeed, in Hull, the Conservative minority group voted for this, along with the rest of the council. So, and even tonight, Conservative in Swansea backed a similar motion at Swansea City Council. So, you know, it's about being progressive and open with your debates. And we haven't seen that from the Conservative members. I'd like to say I'm surprised, but I am, in fact, actually just disappointed. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Masters. Mr. Sheikh, will you take us through the vote, please?
I'm not going to, thank you, Chairman. I'm now going to ask members.
Point of order. Could I ask for a named vote, please?
Does that have 3 more? 1, 2. Yes, it does. Right, named vote. Please.
Okay. I'm now going to ask members how they wish to vote on the motion for, 18D, I believe, on the agenda. 18D on the agenda, starting with Adrian Abbs.
For.
Steve Arder Water.
Against.
Peter Argyle. Peter Argyle. Can't see Peter Argyle. Can I? Peter Argyle, are you in the room? No.
Chairman, I can confirm he's left the meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Fraser.
Phil Barnett.
For the motion.
Jeff Beck.
Against.
Dennis Pennyworth.
Against.
Dominic Boyk.
Against.
Graham Bridgman.
Against.
Jeff Brooks.
For.
Jeff Kent.
Against.
Hilary Cole.
Against.
James Cole.
Against.
Jeremy Cottam.
For.
Caroline Culver.
For.
Lee Dillon.
For.
Lynn Doherty.
Against.
Billy Drummond, has he left? Councillor Billy Drummond?
He left.
Left him, thank you. Clive Hooker.
Against.
Gareth Hurley.
Against.
Owen Jeffrey.
For.
Rick Jones.
Against.
Nasser Castle.
For.
Alan Lowe.
Against.
Tony Linden.
Against.
Royce Longton.
For.
Ross McKinnon.
Against.
Alan Macro.
For.
Tom Marino.
Against.
David Marsh.
For.
Steve Masters. Steve Masters, I can't hear you.
For.
Thank you. Jeff Mays, he's not present, sorry. Thank you. Andy Moore.
For.
Graham Pask.
Against.
Eric Pettinen.
For.
Claire Rolls.
Against.
Garth Simpson.
Against.
Richard Somner.
Against.
Joe Stewart.
Against.
Martha Vickers.
For.
Tony Vickers.
For.
Andy Williamson.
Against.
Keith Woodhams.
For.
Howard Wollaston.
Against.
Thank you. Let me just do a quick count.
Just wait for Mr. Sheikh to give the result. Have you got them, Mr. Sheikh?
Just lost my count, Chairman. Sorry.
Chairman, if it helps, I can confirm that there were 23 votes against the motion and 17 for, and three people are not, 3 of the members are not with us this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mrs.
Yes.
Fraser. Mr. Sheikh, you're happy with that result?
Yes, I'd like to declare that the motion has been lost.
Okay, right. Thank you, members. Are nearly there. Item 9.
Chairman, if I may have a point of order, please.
If it is a point of order, Mr.
In Councillor Masters' comments, he suggested that the Conservatives' figures were dishonest, which I suggest impugns the integrity of, well, myself. I'm the only person that mentioned the numbers. I wonder if you would withdraw the comment. I'm more than happy to publish the maths on the numbers.
Okay,
it's an integrity issue, I think.
Chairman, if you will indulge me, in light of the tone of this council meeting and some of the mud that's been slung and the messages I've had from members of the public, not of my party, during the meeting, I think that Councillor McKinnon is just, again, rabble-rousing and wanting to showboat. So I will not withdraw.
Right, I'm going to stop this. We have had some slightly frayed nerves and tempers. We normally conduct our business in a slightly different way, and I know people can get carried away. I'm not excusing anyone from any side. I'm very keen to move on to the last 2 items on the agenda. I'm sure the figures will be published. Councillor McKinnon, you can make them clear. Councillor Woodhams, you have a question.
Question in my name, Chairman.
Right, and I'm going to ask Councillor Somner to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Williams, I should thank you for your question, although in truth I do find it a little bit disappointing on a number of levels. Firstly, there seems to be, conveniently, one could suggest, no recognition of the operational need for maintenance requirements over the desire for a headline. Secondly, there's no direct and total correlation between damage to any of the items mentioned and endangered lives of pedestrians, as you're well aware. And finally, I can only surmise that during a Rip Van Winkle phase, you seem to have lost the years between the change of control of the Conservatives in 2005 to 2015. They are not one and the same. However, I will say this. In the last 5 years, council officers have issued several thousand works orders in relation to signs, lamp columns, and other street furniture. These work orders cover new works, wear and tear, vandalism, and some are due to damage from vehicles. Now, the time needed to sift through these purchase orders to try and understand the exact historic reason for each request would be considerable. It would not be an effective use of council officers' time, and in absolute respect for them, I've not asked officers to stop other essential work in exceptionally difficult and pressured times to trawl through historical records for detail. Whilst I fully expect that to be a disappointment to you, I will clarify that road traffic collisions occur for a wide variety of reasons. For example, a recent collision, I believe in your ward, which you're quite vocal about, until I understand it was established that the driver had sadly blacked out at the wheel. There was no evidence of driving without care, nor of speeding. For the record, I truly hope that driver has made a full and healthy recovery. Unlike this event, the majority of incidents go unreported, and we would receive no data or incident report from the police. Where we do receive police reports, I can assure you that the council officers investigate and, where appropriate and practical, implement road safety intervention measures. I would also add, and I know this personally from witnessing and reporting an incident where a driver reversed at low speed into a lamppost, rendering it unsafe, that where we have details of any offending motorists that damage council property, I can assure you that repair costs are recovered through insurance.
Right. Thank you. We have 4 minutes only. I'm closing this at 10:30. Do you have a very brief supplementary question, Councillor Woodhams?
Yes, thank you. Does the executive member for Highways agree with me that in the majority of cases, road signage has probably been hit by vehicles because they've been travelling far too fast and lost control. Can the executive member of Highways therefore tell me what he is doing to cut the speeds of these potentially dangerous drivers?
A briefish answer if you can, Councillor Sunderland.
Well, I think there were two questions there, Chairman. My answer to the first one would be no.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Question B, Councillor Marino.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question in my name, please, Chairman.
And Councillor Berwick. Bear in mind, you've got 3 minutes total, gentlemen. Councillor Berwick.
Right with you, Chairman. Thank you.
Oh, I was going to say written answer. I'm going to be really hot on this. Quickly.
West Berkshire Council has launched a COVID winter grant scheme worth £279,000 for food, energy and other essential items for families with children and other vulnerable families or individuals in need due to the pandemic. Free school meal vouchers for the school Christmas and half-term holidays will also form part of the programme. The scheme will run from the 1st of December to the 31st of March 2021. Through the scheme, the Council will provide families, individuals and vulnerable people with financial support for food, utility bills and water bills for household purposes and other related essentials. As part of the scheme, we will make arrangements for the provision of free school meal vouchers for eligible children in early years settings and 5 to 16-year-olds during the Christmas and February half-term school holidays, 17 days in total. And children in school who don't receive free school meals but are considered by the school as vulnerable will be included. Consideration will also be given to children between 16 and 18 and those children in cross-border education settings. And we're going to we've published how people can apply for this, and details on how the vouchers will be implemented are currently being finalised with schools. As well as the £279,000, we've had further funding of £150,000 and even further fund for emergency assistance of £103,000, making a total of £500,000, £532,000 that we are making available to support our most needy people in West Berkshire during the coming winter months and these difficult times. I hope everybody can see that the Conservative government and the Conservative-led authority of West Berkshire are supporting our most needy people.
Hear, hear. You have 1 minute or less for a supplementary and answer. Councillor Marino.
You'll be pleased to know, Chairman, that I don't have one. Thank you, Councillor.
Oh, that's a relief. Right, with 30 seconds to spare, councillors, may I thank you for for your attention, your attendance, and your contributions tonight. It's been a long one, and I'm sorry about your overtime claim, Councillor Brooks, but I wish you all a very good night and thank you indeed. And may I also wish you all, in that this is the last time we'll all be together, and as we are firmly in December, a very happy to you all.